Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guests. You heard it right, fucking guests to the podcast. Two of my closest friends, guys I've known for several decades. They really need no introduction, but I'm going to fucking do it anyway. The first one is the 100 Deadly Skills franchise creator. He's the CEO of Escape the Wolf and the curator, because I like that fucking word and it sounds lame, of the Violent Nomad series in terms of apparel and everyday carry. The second guest is a former Navy SEAL with multiple combat deployments. He's the CEO of SH9, which is a custom knife and tool maker. It's a company that specializes in making cool shit to fuck things up with. He makes Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs seem like a choir boy and can make a porn star blush. Please welcome to the stage Shane Hiatt and Clint Emerson.
Yay! Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, hey. As you guys probably ascertained in listening or even watching, is that there is a different song in terms of our intro, and I want to explain that for all the people like, why'd the fucking song change? What happened to the old one? Because I know those comments, even though I'm explaining it, they're still going to get asked. But we had some in moving both episodes, and what the fuck is it? In moving the episode or the studio rather. We managed to was that you again, asshole? I
can't help it.
Is that fucking snapping?
What are you talking about?
Fucking bastard, both of you. In moving the fucking studio and also big shifts in personnel, etc., we had some technical difficulties with that song in terms of making it work for the new format, and so I reached out to a buddy of mine who is the lead guitarist for Breaking Benjamin, Jason Rauch, and asked him if he would be so kind as to just recreate the intro song and play it so that we can use kind of a live, real recording of a badass musician to buffer that in. And his response was, well, how about I just rewrite a fucking brand new song just for you in the podcast? And I said,
damn. Well, that was mighty wide of him.
I said, well, holy fuck. Cool. Of course I would say yes to that. So I would love that. And so the song that you just heard in the intro was written, played, recorded, edited, the whole fucking ball of wax by the lead guitarist of Breaking Benjamin just for the Mic Drop podcast. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I do.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Pretty humbled and honored to have somebody like that do that. So big thanks to Jason, and I hope you guys like it. Even if you don't, double fuck you to it because it's staying. So anyway, nice. Here we go. So this is a fucking podcast that we've been trying to get together for 2 years now, probably. Mm-hmm. And now that we're
since before you were even doing podcasts.
Yeah. I don't even know how that works, but the cool thing is now that we're in a new studio, this is the first episode of actually having all of my shit together. I did release an episode.
Is that what you think? That all your shit's together now?
Well, so as far as everybody's concerned, that's listening.
Gotcha.
The table's done, as you guys can see. We've got the signage up in the background. The episode that we did last time was a bit of a Band-Aid in terms of where we were at in here, but things have come a long way, and you guys are the first episode christening the fucking table and everything else. So congrats.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Well, thanks for making it adult size.
Yeah,
the table. I mean,
it's fun size.
It's fucking plenty big.
It's it's big enough to feel intimate.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. If you feel something under the table.
Exactly right.
All right, real quick, I'd like to take a second to thank our sponsors. That's Origin Labs and Origin USA, the makers of all of Jocko's products, as well as their own line of both supplements, gis and jeans and boots and a whole manner of stuff. We're also looking to do some stuff with them with Tricos here very shortly, as well as Bubs Naturals, which we're going to kind of get into here a little bit. Bubs Naturals makes collagen powder and MCT oil powder that all three of us tend to use on a regular basis. More importantly, is that the foundation that it supports, as well as the name. Our good friend, collectively, all three of us have been to war with Glen. He was one of our closest friends. and that his nickname of Bub is what the company is named after, as well as a portion of proceeds going to the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation, which all three of us have done some things to support. So we thank them for being a sponsor of this podcast, considering it's the three of us. We've also got some products from Shane that we're going to showcase that have something to do with Glen also. So appreciate Bub's Naturals as well as Origin Labs as always. What's something that's embarrassing about each other? I want you guys, we're all going to go. You guys can pick me first. Something that's embarrassing about me. You guys both get a crack at it.
Something that we find embarrassing.
Yeah, or annoying. Either one. Fucking embarrassing or annoying. I'm going to pick annoying because I'm going to do something annoying about you for sure.
Well, I ain't got shit embarrassing. So,
what's something annoying that I do?
Fuck. That's a good damn question.
Pass.
Yeah.
Mike, something embarrassing. Let's see. There was this moment. This actually applies to both of you.
Sweet.
And
oh Christ!
I don't know that
I already know what this story is.
It's
Guam, it's Guam, isn't it?
Is it Guam?
Probably.
Yeah. So once upon a time, when Mike was single,
No shit, there we were.
yeah, he was a single guy.
First
this is
deployment.
before marriage. I'm just enunciating that. Yeah, where is it? It was Guam. Yeah, it was Guam. And so Mike is in the hot tub with a little Japanese girl. Neither one of them spoke the language of one another.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a language barrier there. And eventually, she ends up basically playing around on top of Mike like he's like a cheap jungle gym set.
Which I am.
And,
Right.
Yep. And then he went to the door of his hotel room, which he happened to be sharing with
This
guy right here.
This
Yeah.
fucking guy.
And so they're at the door, and you got those key cards. This chick is all over Mike. Let me get into this more with the storytelling. So
Like a hobo on a ham sandwich.
she is all over him like a tick in the Alabama heat
Yeah.
on a dog looking for its dinner. And they're standing at the hotel room door, right?
Yeah.
And that little key card, right? You can put it in, it can turn green. And green means go.
Giddy up.
And that's when Mike was going to get it on. And he got
Allegedly.
that green, the green light. And so he puts that key cord in, and he can barely see the doorknob because she's basically trying to suck his face off. And then
Allegedly.
he turns his back to the door to push it open because she's just all over him.
Yeah.
And then the first thing she sees, right? Keep in mind, his back pushing the hotel room door open. And so she's looking across his left ear and can see into the room because his back is to the room. And then her first sight is old Shane here. Shane is butt naked, sitting on the edge of his bed in direct view to Mike's new Japanese girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he is masturbating. With
Now, who was embarrassed in this? 'Cause I was not.
he is beating his meat vigorously.
You forgot that there's the tapered end of a hairbrush stuck out of his ass also. It's
not true.
Massaging his prostate.
What in the fuck would I need with a hairbrush? Look at me.
I think that's everybody's question until they smell the hairbrush.
Yeah. So anyway, the first view is for this poor little Japanese innocent girl is the view of Shane beating his meat, and he must have been going for a while because according to
No, he didn't even stop.
No, yeah, he didn't even stop. And then he stops in the middle of it for a second to go, what the fuck are you doing here? As if...
Are you coming in or not?
His interruption. How rude of Mike to be interrupting this...
Can you not see what I'm doing here?
This session with Shane. So
needless to say...
Yeah. It kind of goes to both of you, but really it's more for Shane.
This is a repeating theme for me.
Masturbation, yeah.
It's in the book.
Yeah. It actually
If
is.
it's in the book, it's true.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. The shout out, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah,
That was solid work.
Remember this. When you buy Shane's knives, remember what he's been handling just before he ships it to you.
These hands are made for handling things.
Yeah, everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
All right, so now it's your turn. What do you got on?
I got nothing.
You got nothing?
I got nothing.
That's
I
some
don't do
weak
embarrassment, and neither one of you really irritate me at all, which is why we keep hanging out.
All right.
Yeah.
The only thing that comes to mind on me is that there's two things. I'll mention one for each. Clint has a bit of a nervous tick. It's almost like what would you call it? A fucking. And this is more on the embarrassing thing, like if we're out in town or whatever.
Tourette's.
It is. Like we'll be in the middle of nowhere and like like in a fucking quiet restaurant, and he'll just bust out laughing for no fucking reason. You know, or make some weird goddamn noise super loud, and everybody looks around like, the fuck's wrong with that guy? Now Shane, on the other hand, Shane puts his fucking gum in his drinking water at every fucking restaurant without fail.
Not necessarily. Sometimes I put it on the rim of the glass. It depends on what I'm drinking.
Either way, it's fucking irritating.
I don't know why does that bother you?
Because every time the fucking waitress is like, oh my God, I got to get you a new fucking thing of water. And then you tell her,
Nope.
you go through the same goddamn story.
Don't throw my shit away.
It's just it's just fucking dumb. Anyway, moving on. What's your best roadhead story? Each of you.
Oh, Jesus.
Jeez, I've only had that one time.
Wow, one whole
Your
time.
dog
time.
doesn't count.
No. That I've done that a lot of times.
and
That
I'm
wasn't-
sure.
and also-
there is no doubt in my mind.
And we can't do that shit while we're driving because he doesn't understand where to be.
Your dog doesn't count if you have to use peanut butter.
That's
the
true.
thing, but
That's true. But you teach with peanut butter, and it leads to just reward.
fucking roadhead one time.
One time. Yeah, but it was.
How old are you?
Sneaking on 50.
Sneaking.
Yeah, sneaking.
You're fucking diving head first.
But it
one
was
fucking
for a long time. And it was.
Look at him trying to justify that.
No, it was.
It accounted for at least 5 different roadhead journeys.
I don't know what it counted for. I don't know how that. I don't
It
know how
counted
that
for
math
just
is
the
done.
once.
I don't know.
It was
how
just
that
one
math's
time.
done. But it was from San Diego proper all the way to Edwards Air Force Base.
What is that, like fucking 6 hours?
That's 3.5, 4 at least.
Jesus fuck.
And I just couldn't get a nut.
Fucking
poor
iron
girl.
jaw.
She was a trooper. She went after it but it wasn't happening. So when we got off the highway, I was going to check out Loki when he was still a pup.
All right.
And we got off the highway.
That's what you were thinking about.
Maybe that's what was distracting me. I don't know. But I couldn't get it done. So when we got off the highway, right where the kennel was, and I just bent her over in the front seat and finished.
All right.
And then we went ahead and drove on into the kennel.
Just like that. Oh, she have sandpaper for a fuck? She had a cat tongue?
No, it was great. I just couldn't get there.
Poor dog.
All right, Clint, your turn.
It's probably had to be DC. Just getting lost. You know, DC is an easy place to get lost, right? And then being lost isn't such a bad deal if you're getting a blowjob. So
That's true.
yeah.
Then you're not
Get
really
lost.
You're
Get lost.
driving
Anytime
around
that
enjoying
happens,
yourself.
guys, get lost. Just,
Next thing you know, you're plowing through the fucking White House gate.
that's it. Or you end up on the Beltway and it's traffic and you've got 2 semis on either side.
Giving you the fucking
And you just
thumbs up.
pretend that,
Nobody can see what's
There's
going
nothing
on.
going
in
on
here. Windows are tinted.
and all of a sudden you realize the semis are going the same speed as you, right?
No matter how fast or slow
Yep.
you go.
Big wide open space in front of all
Why
of
are
you.
they just paralleling me like that?
Fucking great. I'm assuming you got to finish, right? You didn't have the same fucking problem?
Regularly. Yes, finish regularly. I try.
That's good.
Try.
All right, favorite EDC for both of you?
Current or all time?
Both.
Current.
All right. So hold it up for the
Oh.
for this one.
Yeah. So that's my my version of the Kirdashi. It's a Japanese woodworking knife.
Why are your hands shaking?
Because I haven't had enough coffee this morning.
Maybe too much. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, that's all right. So that's my current, and it's because it sits real clean, doesn't print, easy access, offhand draw.
And so, what does that differ from your all-time favorite?
Slightly.
So what's the all-time favorite?
All time would be the Mini Coupe that I make.
And so why are you not carrying that now?
Because it prints, and it's not as easy to conceal. For concealment, I like this one better.
All right. Mr. Emerson.
Well, as long as you're self-plugging, my coffee cup is my favorite because it was made by
Specifically to punch somebody in the
violentnomad.com.
I didn't say shit about my company. Jesus.
You're plugging your own shit in the middle of a podcast.
Damn right I am.
You know how disrespectful that is?
What do you think I came on this thing?
My coffee cup, though, is my favorite EDC at the moment with the knuckles, brass knuckles.
He actually asked
and
about
it says
EDC
outwit,
knife.
outplan, outmove, outlive,
actually
because
said EDC
it's violent
knife.
nomad.
For those of you that are unfamiliar, the three of us went on a camping trip couple months
More
ago.
than one time.
And one voluntarily here a couple months ago, and I can assure you that 90% of the time was these two fuckers bickering about shit.
There's no bickering.
I felt like the bastard kid in a shitty marriage. What's your worst childhood memory?
Oh God.
Wow.
Childhood memory.
The worst fucking one you can think of.
Damn.
Make it really shitty.
Oh wow. Well, there was this time I was doing a sleepover at a friend's house,
And my uncle showed up.
and this guy, worse, right? This YMCA director, not just a counselor, a director, had stopped by for something, and I wake up in the middle of the night to my hand jerking him off.
Get the fuck out. At the Y?
No, this was at someone's house.
Oh, at someone's
right?
house.
I'm sleeping on the couch.
Holy shit.
This dude is laying parallel to the couch on the floor next to the couch.
How old were you
right?
at this time?
I don't even remember.
Like 12?
Yeah, probably. Somewhere in that, early teens, maybe somewhere. So I'm passed out on the couch. The living room's dark. And this guy lays down next to the couch. And then my hand is already hanging off the couch.
Yeah.
And so before you know it, I wake up and my hand is gripping this male cock.
Was it a nice cock or was it
I don't even remember. It was too dark. And I pull my hand away, and then this body jumps up and runs to the closest room and slams a door behind it. Now, here's the sick part, right?
Oh, that's not the sick part.
No, not even close.
Solid.
So I look around, and my shoes and my socks are off, right? Well, it's not odd for my shoes to be off, but my socks were off. I didn't take my socks off, right? My socks were off. So I go back to the Y later on that week, and I let people know that this had happened, right?
How did you know that he was the guy?
Because I recognized him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was dark,
he'd
but
seen his
we
cock
could still-
before. This wasn't.
I'd felt it
first
before.
time.
Yeah, so
Familiar cock.
So anyway, I start informing people like right off the bat, like, hey, this dude's fucked up, right?
Yeah.
And so another person comes forward, except his story was, I woke up with my socks off and he was sucking my toes.
God.
So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, my God, he already sucked my toes and he had moved on
He'd already
to the
been on
next
my
step.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
So you started the Me Too movement.
Yeah, exactly.
Good job.
Hashtag pound me too.
That's right.
Christ,
Pound
man.
me
So
too.
did anything ever happen to this fucking guy?
Yeah, I think he ended up getting fired, and that was that. And that was the last anybody had heard of the dude.
Fired.
But,
Yeah, that's
It
a
was-
solid punishment for that.
Yeah,
Getting
It
fired.
made me who I am today.
Well, I mean, it helped.
And the reason why I
Consider
as
if that hadn't happened, where would you be today?
as a medic, I want you guys to know and come out here on this podcast and tell you how much I've always enjoyed fondling your penises because of how I was abused as a child.
I don't
Especially
think that's-
digging around in
I don't
Mike's
think that's
ass.
why you enjoy it. I think you enjoy it because of who you are.
So yeah.
There you go. Beat that, Shane. Let's hear your molestation stories.
Well, hang on though. Did you tell your parents about that?
I didn't. No.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I mean, ever later on, did you ever tell them?
Nope. No, it was, you know what's funny about it is it was more of a surprise type weird thing than it was like, I wasn't like embarrassed by it. Like a lot of people are victims. They're embarrassed or they feel like somehow they're at fault or there's other underlying issues that evolve from it. But for me, it was like, dude, this guy is fucked in the head.
This
and I'm going to
guy's
make sure he
fucked up.
burns for it,
Yeah.
you know? And so, but yeah, it was definitely weird. You know, I wouldn't say it was traumatic because I've talked about it since. It's not like it's, you know, but I think you live long enough, man, you're going to run into weird shit in your life.
That's no shit, especially hanging out with you two.
No shit.
But Shane.
So, gun safety story.
All right.
I was middle school,
That's
so
boring.
Yeah, no, well, I came
You don't
up-
have any random cocks in your mouth.
there's nothing random about the cocks that come near me. All right.
The timing of that statement.
Well, notice the Freudian slip to mouth.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah.
It wasn't.
If
Freudian.
you're watching YouTube, you'll get that. If you're just listening to audio,
you're not going to have any idea.
If you're
what's going
still
on.
listening,
Right,
actually.
if you're
But I
still-
was saying, these microphones articulate so
Those
well.
articulate nice.
That's not by accident.
So there was it's probably 7th grade, 12, 13 time frame.
Yeah.
And there was a girl
Last
that,
year.
because I look so young. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I just I was looking for that first shot, right? And she got off the bus maybe a mile from the house, or from where I got off the bus. And I got off with her and went to her house. And I thought, today's going to be the day. And her old man had a couple of pistols, one of which was a muzzleloader pistol. There's no real way to tell if a muzzleloader pistol's loaded. I don't know if you're aware of that. Yeah, so I was playing with it, and I was showing her, her old man had a revolver, so I stripped it out, dumped everything out of it, and I was showing her how Russian roulette would be played. You put one round in, and no rounds in the gun, but I was just showing her.
Wait a minute. How do you play Russian roulette with a fucking muzzleloader?
No. 6-shooter first.
Oh, all right.
And so I was showing her this, and then I had this muzzleloader. I was like, I wonder if this is loaded, and I put it up to my head. I'm like, I can't tell if it's loaded. I don't know if it's loaded. So I fucked around with it, put it down, picked it up again, put it in my head. I don't know if it's loaded. Boom!
Oh,
right into the fucking refrigerator door. Shit,
That's a good place to point it.
I about shit myself.
We'd be laughing at
Jesus
this.
Christ.
I'm not sure.
Holy shit! Like that. That might be the closest I've self mutilation,
Well,
and completely unknown. A 13-year-old kid just showing off for some girl. And I was like, holy shit. Needless to say, all the sexual tension was rapidly released, and I walked my ass home.
You didn't bang it out after that.
No. Strangely enough, there was no interest anymore from either one of us.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's America's finest.
That's right.
That's pre-SEAL training.
I'm not a gun nut anyway, so yeah.
That's fucking great. All right, so for those of
Be
you
careful,
that
Shane. I know it's only been a year since that episode. Be careful.
I'm a little uncomfortable with it still. Please, will you hold me later?
As long as I get to hold your cock.
Perfect.
Right. Perfect.
That's what I meant.
Hey, so let's talk about those sponsors real quick. Yeah,
Bet you guys are glad you jumped on this bandwagon.
for sure.
Origin will be calling you tomorrow.
They're not second guessing anything right now. All right, so Clint. Here's the cool thing is that Clint was my very first guest, so a little reminiscent.
Oh yeah.
He kicked the fucking podcast off, so we've already gone over some of the normal questions that I would typically ask about morning routine and background and stuff. We're going to focus on his book primarily, but since this is Shane's first time and probably only,
please go easy on me because it's my first.
we're gonna go over some of his background while the zoo finishes up, and then then we'll get into Clint's book. But I want to hear about Shane's morning routine.
Every day or today?
Oh God.
Well, I would say only when you travel, but you kind of are always traveling. So
That's true. Well, it's the same no matter what. I only threw that out there to see if you'd give me a choice.
Just the most normal day, if there is such a fucking thing in your
I
world.
typically get up between 5:30 and 7 to take a leak.
What's that swollen prostate at your age?
No, it's just because I like to get up and take a leak before I rub one out.
Oh, okay.
And usually feed the dog because it's in the truck with me.
He lives in his truck, by
I
the
do.
way, for those of you listening.
For the past 10, 11 years.
For 20 years.
11 years now.
11 years. 11 years.
I mean, off and on more for the last 20, really.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Which is nothing weird about that.
No, nothing at all. It's a freedom that most couldn't handle.
Yeah.
I got to tell you.
Yeah, totally.
So post piss and feed the dog, I crawl back in the truck and turn on my handy iPhone 11 and pick up some nice free porn and rub one out. And then I usually doze off for a while because that's always nice.
Yeah.
And then I'll roll out of the rack sometime between 8 and 10 because I got nowhere to be in the rest of my life to get there.
Where do you get your free porn from?
I like.
Talk into the mic like it's the dick that you're watching.
I'm talking. He asked the fucking question.
Right. But the
you can
hundreds of thousands of people that are listening,
They can fucking hear me.
yeah, they're not looking at Clint or sitting right next to him.
They can fucking hear me.
I don't know if you know how these microphones work, but
I don't actually. It's pure magic.
Have you seen how they articulate?
I did. I saw how they articulate.
fuck. You
So
should have sat there.
Where do you
honestly.
get your free
You're
porn?
probably right. X videos is my favorite.
X videos.
Yeah.
New sponsor.
That's my
idea.
go-to.
Yeah, we may be looking for new sponsors after this one.
Probably should be.
Yeah. All right. So childhood. Now these are things that Clint and I already know
Right.
more than we'd like to know, frankly, about him. But
But you're gonna ask anyway.
give us the synopsis on your fucking childhood.
Going back to your Clint being your first guest.
Yeah.
I found it kind of interesting because I've never been a podcast guy.
Mm-hmm.
I knew all of the stories you guys talked about on the first podcast, and I still listen to every fucking syllable.
No shit.
And it entertained the living shit out of me. So
let's try to keep that going.
yeah, I'm going to try. I just wanted to bring that up since you brought it up earlier.
That's a great story.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was born a poor black child.
That's good. So nothing's changed then.
Oh boy!
I grew up on the Rio Grande River bottom, just south of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
All right.
Was that uncomfortable for you?
No, not at all.
Oh.
No, it's actually what got me where I am today.
I'm just going to start pushing the microphone over.
But they
should
told me
put a gimp thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
harness.
It needs to be like headgear that just holds it.
But they told me not to put it in front of my face,
Like a pacifier.
Yeah.
and he keeps talking to me. Make him stop.
Yeah, you don't have to look at him.
Your head can orbit. Look at this. Look at how that. I can talk almost.
He can talk to you and still talk into the mic. I know you're chewing gum also, and maybe that's too much for you.
It's not.
Yeah. Well, apparently.
Orbit over here. Just orbit.
Either
there
spit
you go.
How's that?
There,
But
see?
now it's in front of my face.
That's fine.
okay.
Nobody wants to look at you anyway.
Oh,
and I got news for you. I don't know that you could make a microphone big enough to block that fucking melon.
Oh, we're having a good time now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Making fun of other people. Is that where you want to be when Jesus comes?
Yeah. I'd like to be behind him. At any rate.
Yes.
I can hear the trumpets already.
So, born, raised, grew up, landlocked in New Mexico. First time I ever flew was when I went to boot camp. First time I ever saw a body of water I couldn't see across was Lake Michigan.
At boot camp.
Well, just after boot camp, because boot camp you don't see shit. A school at Great Lakes.
What was your A school?
EM was my A school. Electrician's mate.
That's
Yep.
right.
I thought you were going to talk about the trailer park first before we get to the Navy.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit missing from
that. There is a lot missing, and
Yeah.
I'm going to need you to milk that out of me.
Let's give the highlights. It's not a cock.
What was the granddaddy's daddy's mother
So-
routine that we used to have
Oh,
with him?
here we
Yeah.
go.
So the paternal
My
relationship that
grandfather
exists.
is my father's. what was it?
My grandpa dad is who you're referring
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
So
I know
explain
where
that
you're
again.
Yeah, you gotta-
So-
you gotta
Because I've
fill-
forgotten.
Bless the listener with this fucking incestuous.
with this nugget.
Yeah.
So my paternal father committed suicide in August of '72. So I was 2.5 years old.
Been driving people crazy your whole goddamn life.
Damn fucking right I have. And
Sensitive prick.
so I have zero memory of him. My brother has a little bit, being a couple of years older than me, but the abusive stepfather that took his place had been maybe 6 years before I was born, married to my grandmother on my paternal father's side. He was a friend of the family. He had been married into the family. He stayed close to the family. After my paternal father suicided, he and my mom knew one another, and she was a single mother in the 70s with 2 boys. And she thought that she needed help. And so she used him for that help, and they ended up getting married. So in essence, he was my grandfather and then my father in that order. I know that guy. I know that shit just tickles the fuck out of you too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've known that for fucking 20
Yeah.
plus years.
Yeah, I know.
I still laugh.
And
at
it's
it.
still good.
Yeah.
That's fucking great.
Makes you special.
It does.
Makes you very
What
special.
when you say he was abusive? So was he the only stepdad that you had?
No, I had another mom. When mom finally got wise to him and decided she didn't need him anymore, she booted him to the curb and married a guy that ended up being a nice fill-in. He was an Army or an Air Force retired, so almost in the military. For all you Air Force fuckers out there, you're almost in the military.
Yeah.
But the first was he was just an abusive prick. He, despite his best efforts, he had an ability to fix and or make just about anything, and he had a nice collection of, shed or shop tools with which to do that, but he was an over-the-road trucker. And so anytime he was around, he was abusive, but he was always doing shit with his hands.
Mm.
There's a shed that he built, that we helped him build out of recycled lumber in the valley of Albuquerque. We built that shed in '76, the summer of '76, and it's still standing on that property today
Oh shit.
from recycled lumber and recycled nails.
God damn.
So his ability to do shit, it may be part of why I'm able to do what I do. It engendered a desire to make shit, build shit, break shit. And I've always wanted to and always enjoyed doing that. We had a couple of neighbors that were that way, you know, just handy with shit. And I always wanted to be that guy.
How old were you when he fucking beat it?
15, like sophomore in high school.
So the new stepdad was just a couple of years before.
Yeah, just before I left for the Navy. Yeah.
How was that fucking bringing him on board? Like, did you?
It was good then. He was a savvy guy. Him and my mom worked together. He had his shit together, and he recognized that he was coming into an established family. My brother was already out of the house. My sister was still at home, and he came to me. He's like, "Hey, look, I really want to date your mom, and I want your blessing to do that."
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. So he was respectful of the family dynamic that he was interrupting.
Yeah.
And he was bailing on his own because his family wasn't working out. So I was close with his kids, his 3 kids from his previous marriage. I was close to them.
Really?
Yeah. So
and you still talk to them, right?
Sort of. Well, he died this spring, and they've kind of gone their own way and had been for a while.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, so you had an older brother, a sister who also, she passed away a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, she was, she was same year as Glenn, February that same year, 12.
I got you.
Yeah.
And it was a medical complication.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. She was 37.
How was the relationship growing up just between the three of you? Like, were you guys pretty tight, or?
My brother and I were really tight, just like stories about you and Peach Jesus in the book. That shit's good shit.
Yeah, we're gonna get into some of those.
Yeah, it was a similar dynamic. We were 2.5 years apart, and so we were tight. But he beat the shit out of me on a recurring basis because I was an ornery little fuck, and it was his position in the hierarchy of biology to be that guy for me. But what was beautiful about it was nobody else was allowed to lay a hand on me.
Like in school?
Yeah, in school, in where we grew up. I grew up similar to you. I was a minority where I grew up. My high school graduating class was 406, and there was 26 white kids.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say I was a minority. It was about an even split or close to it.
Yeah, so I was truly where I grew up a minority.
Yeah.
And we hung in those circles and we ran around with those kids, but nobody was allowed to lay a hand on me.
Yeah. So I mean, it's almost like prison. Like you're walking around holding his pocket, hanging out.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, just like that. It's no shit. Mom, what the fuck? One of the things that I always enjoyed, as you and I became friends years ago, some of the stories that you would talk about just growing up of little means and some of the kind of the ways that you guys would stretch fucking finances and kind of make do with what you had. One that kind of sticks out in particular is just how much farming or vegetable growing and things of that nature, like how much of that you did. And the more I kind of get into nutrition and how big of an impact it has on kids being raised and even mothers when they're pregnant and societal impacts that it has, I'm curious, like it's if I remember correctly, like you had a pretty significant upbringing as it relates to eating a lot of the shit that you guys either farmed or raised or whatever on your own property, right?
I would say probably 85-90% of what we consumed was what we grew.
Yeah, I mean,
it's clearly why I'm such a
svelte mother,
a beacon of health now.
Yeah. I mean, clearly it did you right.
No, there's no question. It's funny when I first went in the military. So Mom took me to the MEP station the morning of her 40th birthday. So I was like, "Hey, happy birthday! Take me to the fucking airport. I'm going to the Navy." And 2.5, 3 years after you get out of, boot camp, A school, buds, the whole gambit, I finally got my first apartment in Virginia Beach. And I went out and, got the bare necessities and then bought groceries.
Yeah.
And that night I called my mom. I was like, "I am so fucking sorry." She was, "What'd you do?" I'm like, "I just bought food for the first time, like for a house."
Yeah.
"How in the fuck did you feed us when we were growing up?" She's like, "What do you think that garden was for?"
Yeah.
We did 2 pigs and a cow every year on the property we raised and butchered. We had chickens throughout my childhood. We provided eggs for the entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we butchered chickens usually once a year. And we grew on a 1/2 acre pretty much everything, the standard garden variety vegetable platter.
Did she can the shit out of everything too?
Yeah, every winter she canned. I mentioned my stepdad was an over-the-road trucker. He'd bring home, his treks took him New Mexico, Texas. He was mostly Southwest, so anywhere where there was bushes of shit on the side of the road, he'd bring that home if it wasn't something we already grew.
Yeah.
And Mom canned every week. The shed that I was talking about, it was our pump house and our canning storage.
So that property that you grew up on, that's where that shed is at?
Yeah.
You fucking drive by it?
Yeah. Yeah, I go by, I go down there every now and then just to see.
And creep on whoever the fuck's living there.
Hey, who the fuck are you? You know I built that.
That's fucking
Yeah, I built that. I straightened the nails for it.
Yeah.
I was abused in that shed.
I was.
My uncle taught me how to wrestle in that shed.
So
naked.
So that old man beat me with everything from an extension cord to a 2x4 hoe handle, bullwhip, buggy whip.
What was your favorite?
Which one hurt the most?
I would have to say the buggy whip because he couldn't get me with it because I ducked and dodged. My brother would always stand and take a beating. I never did, and that drove that old man fucking crazy.
Yeah, I'm curious, which one hurt the worst?
Yeah.
Extension cord was that was a whole bunch of fuck you all in one spot.
Pick up some extension cords.
12 gauge would be my preferred if you're going to go that route.
Yeah, with the fucking 3-prong.
Yes,
receptacle.
absolutely.
Oh yeah. Mm.
Who doesn't love a 3-prong receptacle?
3-prong receptacle. Everybody's got a 3-prong receptacle.
That's right.
But without the garden, and she said flat out, she's like, "There's no way I could have raised 3 kids without that shit."
Yeah, that's fucking cool. You sports, you swam, correct?
Yeah. I was gonna play football.
Then you realized you sucked.
Injury.
Yeah, sure.
I got an old football injury.
Sure.
It turns out.
Yeah. Don't we all?
So, 8th grade year, fall, you could go out for spring football for high school, but you had to do a 2-week training. Like it was just a physical academy to prove that you could work out and, had what it took. And you worked out with the kids that were already on the football team. They had one of those old leg sleds with the chain adjustment for depth. And that chain adjustment was just a steel plate with a 3/8 chain. So it had a slot cut in it that was just wide enough for one link. So you push the sled up and you pull the link through and you adjust for depth. And there was a kid, he was one of the neighbor kids actually. He's a junior? I think he was a junior. And I was working out with him and he wanted me to adjust the leg sled, and he had a couple of 100 pounds on it, and he pushed it up and the chain got jammed. He's like, "Are you good?" I said, no, wait a minute. And so he let it go and it sucked my right index finger into that chain slot and tore the fingernail off and split it from the knuckle up underneath the fingernail bed.
You have the goddamnedest luck with your fingers.
Yeah, no shit. No shit. So because of that was like day 2 of 2 weeks. Because of that, I couldn't go out for freshman football because I missed the 2-week.
They wouldn't let you play because your finger was fucked
Well,
up?
because I ended up with stitches and I wasn't supposed to be doing shit. So I missed that 2-week block. I got 2 days of it. It wasn't enough. So when I started my freshman year, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So there was the science teacher at the time ran the swim team.
Yeah.
And there was a notice for the swim. I was like, I like the water. I'll go do that. And so I swam for 4 years.
All right. And you were a pretty decent swimmer.
I was decent. I was never, it's funny. I thought I was really fast until I made state, and then I went and swam against the really fast kids. Yeah. I wasn't really fast. I mean, I was good, but I wasn't that good. Yeah. But I was always really comfortable in the water. My brother and I fucked around the lake. We went up to Cochiti Lake probably every weekend of the summer. Most of my childhood. We spent, hours in the water fucking with one another.
Was your time from a swimming standpoint, is that why you joined the Navy as opposed to another service? Or talk about that. I
bow hunted with a guy. He was my neighbor, same age as my mom, which at the time he seemed so fucking old to me. And I'm 20 years older than he was then.
You are old.
Easy.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying.
I look younger than you, which is nice.
According to you.
According to everybody watching.
You look like a shaved ball sack. Just continue the story. So you're helping this guy.
So we bow hunted.
Right.
He taught me to bow hunt. I worked for him and his partner wiring houses. And when I started talking about going in the military, he had flown helicopters, Vietnam era. And he had this piece of advice for me. He says, if you're going to go in the military, I highly recommend the Navy. It gives you the most opportunity to travel. I was kind of gypsy by nature from a little kid. And he said, as far as the opportunity to travel, it's as good as you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it's the most complete opportunity to travel, as opposed to going to a base. You'll actually get to see shit.
Yeah.
And then he did the reverse psychology thing with me. He said, there's this group of guys. I'm unlike either one of you. I didn't know shit about the teams. Books, I had nothing. So this was 87 time frame. He says, if you're going to go in, he said, there's this group of guys in the Navy. They're called SEALs. They're out of their fucking minds, and you definitely don't want to do that. But anything else is kind of open-ended. Yeah. And so, of course, that was the first thing that I started asking about when I finally got in touch with a detailer or with a recruiter. And my recruiter, to his credit, didn't bullshit me and say, yeah, and feed me a line. Like, look, I don't know anything about it other than during your first 2 weeks, they're going to show you this video, be someone special. At the end of that, they'll review your ASVAB scores. He'd already verified. He said, your scores are fine for anything you want to do.
The fifth time you took it.
One time.
Fifth time.
I'm one and done, baby, just like you. I don't fuck around with that more than once because it sucks. So he didn't lie to me. Just they'll give you the opportunity. When they give you the opportunity, stick your little paw in the air and say you want to try it.
And so that's what you did.
And so that was my avenue into the teams.
And then so you went through BUD/S. You made it through with the class after you, right? You got rolled once. Right?
I didn't class up with my original class. I showed up about 6 weeks before my original class, and I went from not running at all. I was a swimmer. I never run. When I joined the Navy, when I took the BUD/S PT test in boot camp, it was the first time I'd ever run 1.5 miles all at once.
Yeah.
And it like to fucking killed me. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And so I always had a really bad taste in my mouth for running, but
it wasn't just the running.
Yeah, it was. It was mostly the running. So showing up to BUD/S 5-6 weeks before my class date and just running to chow, ran stress fractures all the way through my legs and up into my pelvis. I was a fucking shit show. I had shin splints and stress fractures. And when I went to the class up physical, they rake that spoon up the inside of your shin, and I fucking decked the doc. And he said, okay, you're not classing up. That would have been 163. And I missed that class up and got put on a running program for maintenance.
Yeah.
What that really did was gave me an opportunity to learn about Motrin and how to hide that shit.
Yeah.
So that I could class up the next class and figure it out.
And so you went all the way through with 164.
Yeah.
All right. So then if you could just kind of give us the Reader's Digest of your first time in the Navy until you went to college and then ultimately linked up with Clint and I where we met, just kind of synopsize that period.
Synopsize.
It's difficult for Shane to do that.
I know, you can't synopsize.
Basically, he's saying we don't need all the details in your fucking story.
Is that what that means?
That is what that means. Try to remember that throughout the talk.
Check. So boot camp A school BUD/S.
You're the only guy I have to do that with, by the way.
You're welcome.
Keep this short, will you?
It's good for you. It's growing. I'm trying to help you grow.
Yeah, no, it's great.
But I am glad to know that your science teacher was your swim coach in high school.
Yeah.
She's a big, tall, skinny broad. She was. As I remember it, she was pretty easy on the eyes.
They're still not talking into the mic half the time.
Yeah, well, they can still fucking hear me. I doubt anybody's going to phone in and say, I can't hear that bald fucker at all.
Well, here's the thing. In today's day and age, nobody phones in anyway. But
they might be.
If you could, continue.
Yeah. So there was no SQT at the time. Yeah. They were starting it was STT, SEAL Tactical Training.
Yeah.
Went through jump school, post BUD/S, before Teammate. I asked for all West Coast and got sent to Teammate. I just missed being a plank owner there. They commissioned October of 89, and I got there in March of 90. Went into at the time, the probationary holding pattern, waiting on a platoon, waiting to do STT, and the first Gulf War kicked off. And so they threw a platoon of new guys together. There was my first platoon, I think there was 13 new guys, 3 guys with experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a shit show, but we had everything to prove and nothing to lose, and so we had. I know a lot of guys say they had shitty platoons and good platoons, and I had a good career in that. Every platoon that I was in was good. You always have, the shitbags, and I don't think that's different anywhere in the in any industry.
Yeah.
But that first platoon, like I said, we had nothing to lose and everything to prove as a bunch of new guys.
And how many platoons deployments did you do on the East Coast?
So I did 2 full workups and 3 deployments on the East Coast.
Because one, you got back and jumped right into another.
Yeah, after my second, when I came back from the second, it was a platoon I think they were 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They were on their pre-deployment leave. And one guy broke his foot riding motocross. And I think there was 2 others that got in trouble with fucking drinking and the law and that kind of shit.
Being team guys.
And so they came out at quarters and said, hey, if anybody wants to fill these spots, these are the spots that the platoon is looking for. If you have those quals, come in and talk to and it was the XO that put it out. And I'd been back for maybe 2.5 weeks. I didn't have an apartment. I hadn't even unpacked any of my shit. And I was like, hey, I'll do it. And he's like, didn't you just get back? I'm like, yeah, it's easy. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, all right, go talk to the OIC and the chief and see if they're okay with it.
Yeah.
And I'd already worked with a lot of those guys. I'd done between my first and second training was done at the team level then. And so I'd worked in training cell and I'd helped put that platoon through some of its land warfare. So I knew most of the guys already.
Yeah.
And I'd been at the team at that point for not quite 3 years.
Yeah.
And so it was an easy fit, and I fit one of the missing guys. So
and one of your deployments was a combat deployment when Somalia. I mean, technically, right?
It was. We really didn't do anything. We did some beach measuring, but we did it out of boats. There was a fuck ton of sharks off the coast of Somalia.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome. Good times. So yes, it was technically a combat deployment. We were all on deployed vacation in northern Italy when they did when the Black Hawk Down scenario happened.
Yeah.
And we were the MARG platoon, so we immediately got back on the boat and headed south.
Yeah. And so your time at Team 8 and on the East Coast, generally speaking, came to a close, and you ended up getting picked up for an OCS program, right?
I was convinced, and I think a lot of kids go in with with very altruistic reasons. I'd gotten to the point where I was a senior E5 and I could see a lot of shit that needed changing, and I thought, I'm going to go get a commission. I'm going to change the teams. I'm going to make everything better.
It's like congressman, right?
Correct.
I'm going to go fucking change America.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I put in for a commissioning program. I put in for OCS. I picked up a ROTC scholarship is what I ended up getting, a 4-year ride at University of Arizona. The CO at the time had worked at the academy, and he was convinced he could get me in the academy. I was like, I'm too old for the academy. He's like, I'm going to drive up there, and because it's Virginia, it's an 1.5-hour drive. So he drove up, and he comes back. He's like, yeah, you're too old for the academy. I'm like, yeah, thanks. But he got me some sweet endorsements and got me a full 4-year ROTC scholarship.
Yeah.
And I applied at University of Arizona, UC Boulder, and Texas A&M, and Arizona was the first ones to answer. And I didn't realize that because of my military background and my SATs were high enough that all of them were eventually going to say yes. So when I got to Arizona, I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to Arizona.
Would you have picked one of the other two, given the option?
Hindsight, I don't know. I wanted those 3. They were the closest I could get to New Mexico, where I'm from.
Yeah.
And those were the 3 closest I could get at the time. UNM had gotten rid of their Navy ROTC. It's since stood back up, but there was a dead period where they didn't have it.
Yeah. And so you go back to college. I am curious. I mean,
I didn't go back to college. I went to college for the first time.
You went back to school.
I did.
I am curious. I mean, I already have heard a million of the fucking stories,
Yeah.
but why don't you go get kidnapped, get some new fucking stories.
Yeah, I heard about the fucking time.
Yeah. I am curious, or if you could, share with the listener a little bit, just that experience of going from, doing 3 deployments as a Navy SEAL to back to fucking school and now being with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old dipshits and what that was like.
And dating the Iranian
She was Iraqi.
Iraqi.
Yeah.
Traitor.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get them mixed.
It was like a wicked triple cross.
She was born in Tennessee.
Whatever.
All right. It was interesting because all of this personality didn't really exist when I was on the East Coast.
That's hard to believe.
I was a new guy, and I never felt like I measured up.
Yeah.
You guys have both been in the community. You know,
we've been in the shower. I know you don't measure up. It's fine.
Exactly.
You want to see a new pair of
fucked
socks
up.
I got for Christmas?
I do. I do. Can I wear one?
At any rate.
It dawned on me really quickly that even as a middle of the road athlete in the teams, that I was leaps and bounds above the majority of the population, which shocked the shit out of me because I went from high school into the Navy, into the teams. I didn't have any real comparison.
Yeah.
I hadn't done anything else. And I was in a ROTC unit with, it was a Navy and Marine Corps combined, and there was 130. And even in that group as a slug runner, I was top 10%.
Yeah.
Which just surprised the hell out of me.
I mean, it surprised me because I've run with you a number
I know.
of times.
I know, right? Yeah, no, it's shocking. It was horribly enlightening, but it gave me a whole lot of attitude.
Yeah.
I bounced. I discovered that bouncing was an easy gig to get as a prior team guy.
Yeah.
Tucson, turns out that's where one of our groups does a lot of work, and they're in and out regularly, which was nice. I got to see guys periodically, but being in college at 24 to 28, having some actual life experience, was I think it was definitely a good gig.
Yeah.
Had I done it earlier, it would have been a complete waste. If I'd have waited much longer, I'd have been kind of the creepy old guy.
Yeah.
Which I still
like
probably
you are now.
was a
I mean,
little.
what you've turned into.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You are what you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody has their something.
Right.
So from there you went, and this is where the three of us, where our paths, started to cross, was you ended up not getting your commission.
Right. Yeah.
Failed.
I did. I did not fail out of college.
Failed.
Just one word, failed.
Failed.
like an older
what
brother
happened?
just
Failed.
poking at him.
So here's the real excuse.
So not an excuse at all. When they wrote the ROTC program for the Navy, it was written in the late 60s, early 70s when the Navy was transferring over the nuke. And so they wanted everybody to have an engineering degree. So physics and calculus and calculus-based physics was a requirement for the ROTC scholarship. It was not a requirement for my degree.
Yeah.
But I still had to do it to maintain my ROTC, and calculus fucking undid me.
Mm.
I was working 40 to 60 hours a week, and I was taking 22, 24 units a semester. I just didn't have any time. I could do half of a test perfect.
Yeah.
And that's 50%. And that math
is that what half is?
That math weighs out to a fail in a math test, it turns out.
It's no wonder you had trouble with math.
I'm surprised that
I think anybody listening that's not super familiar, like, does the Navy not pay you? Why were you working so fucking much?
Because at the time, that was pre...
so there was this chick, and she didn't have any fucking money.
So it was pre 9/11 GI Bill. The 9/11 GI Bill, when they changed that, it really changed the landscape for guys going back to school.
I mean, were you legitimately fucking struggling?
I got $216 a month as a ROTC kid in college as an adult.
To live off of.
That's what the Navy paid me. I was an inactive reservist NROTC officer.
Yeah.
And I got $216 a month to live off of.
Is that, do they cover board?
No, they didn't cover shit.
Oh,
I got books. If the ROTC unit had the books so if you picked a degree and your degree fit into what the ROTC unit had in the past, they kept books. So I got some of my books for a lot of my base courses. But when I started in the advanced courses, I had to buy my own books. I had to pay for everything.
Dude, that's fucked.
I simply couldn't. There's no way to make ends meet on $200 a month living off campus.
Yeah, no shit.
And so I went round and round.
You weren't active duty.
No, I was an inactive reservist. Yeah. And
but still, I mean, if you're on a fucking
the ROTC scholarship now, and if you just go on the GI Bill, you get paid for E5 with dependents BAH.
Yeah.
That shit didn't exist then.
Yeah.
So this was 94 to 98.
Back in my day.
Yeah, no shit. There I was, uphill both ways.
So you end up failing calculus.
Oh shit, my shit just went off. Oh, all right.
You back on?
Yeah.
All right. It's those fat fucking knees.
It is.
Moving knobs under the table.
That's right. So I lost my ROTC scholarship. The XO was a Marine and he was a prick, and he just didn't. He was too hardline Marine to get the situation that I was under, and he didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
The CO was a F-14 pilot from Fallon prior, and so he'd worked with team guys, and he brought me into his office. He's like, "Look, here's the deal. You're going to lose your scholarship. There's nothing we can do about that. But your GPA is such that we can keep you in school. You had to maintain a 2.0, and I was like a 2.7, 2.8. Yeah, I was doing really well.
You're really burning it.
Yeah. And he said, as long as you keep above that, it was either 2.0 or 2.5, I'll let you stay in school to finish your degree because I know that's what you want to do. And it would be a shame to do because I was working into my third year when I lost the scholarship.
Yeah.
And so he let me stay in school, and I kept taking the ROTC classes. And so I did my degree, and then I did a double minor.
Your degree is in what again?
My degree is in philosophy.
Right.
That's right. Because Roadhouse,
Yeah.
I bounced, and I got a degree in philosophy. That's
Easy
right.
there, Pat Swayze.
Yeah. And so...
You have a fucking steel-toed knife-tip boot fucking hiding under there, too?
No, that's the bad guys that carry that shit. Come on now.
Whatever.
So he let me finish my degree. I finished in 4 years, right on the number. When I went back on active duty, it was the rule of the Navy was you go back to your last duty station.
Even on the ROTC scholarship?
Yeah, because I didn't finish the scholarship because I didn't get my commission.
Oh, if you don't make it.
Right. If you don't make it, the rule was you were supposed to go back to your last duty station. But I was in Arizona, and it turned out that a guy that I had been at Team 8 with was the detailer. And when I called to talk to the detailer, I got him on the phone, and I was like, "Hey, look, like I'm in Arizona. I always wanted to be on the West Coast. I've done 4.5 years and 3 deployments on the East Coast. Any chance I can go to the West Coast?" And he started asking around the office. We'd been at Team 8 together, and he's like, "Hey, who's got the..." And so he recommended 3.
I got you.
And just happened that orders came available at that particular point in time. And so
then you went out there, and then that's where we all met.
All
now,
linked up.
I'm gonna loop Clint back in here because he's about to
lose his fucking mind.
Sesame Street fucking attention span.
His attention span
fucking losing his mind over here.
I just remember Mike saying about an hour ago he wanted a synopsis, snapshot, Cliff Notes version. And here I sit,
and
like 10 years older.
Well, you were late getting here. We could have got this shit done before you got here, but
we were fucking around anyway.
So, but let's go back. So you didn't finish your degree.
No, I finished my degree. I didn't get my commission.
Ultimately, it's why you live in your truck, right? Because you didn't pay the University of New Mexico.
University of Arizona.
Arizona.
Right? Now, they were chasing you for the first couple of years, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I forgot all about that.
University of Arizona, if you're listening.
I'm unclear what it is you're asking me at this.
Fuck you! I'm not paying it.
I don't know what you're referring to at all.
Hence the reason why he's been living in this truck for 11 years.
Why are there debt collectors at the main gate on base for you, Shane?
Debt? What debt? What are we talking about? Yeah, I don't know what we're talking about right now. You lost me, buddy.
I know. I'm with you.
Yeah, so
I
did
just
they.
like to point out the good stuff.
So did they, apparently. Mm-hmm. Do you remember meeting Shane for the first time?
I do. Yeah. It was, I was at 18 Delta, came back, and you guys had already, the platoon was already formed up, and I heard while I was out there, hey, you're going to be the LPO when you get back kind of thing. And for those of you listening, 18 Delta is like the medical course.
Yeah.
And so I come back, and I didn't meet Shane directly. I met some of the new guys in the platoon who all had Shane attitude.
Yep. Because I had been the acting LPO.
Because really, Shane was running the show, but you could tell they had this slightly disgruntled, corrupted, fuck everyone
You're
attitude.
Welcome. Yeah.
And I remember saying, have you been hanging out with Shane? And they'd be like, actually, yeah. And then I'd ask the next guy, have you been hanging out with Shane?
You have a shitty attitude. Who you been hanging out with?
You have a shitty attitude as well. I think I know who you hang out with.
So it was very apparent that,
So you
just
stepped
hanging out with
in.
Shane, yeah. And that's right? Or was that the second time?
That was the second time because
okay. So I'd met Shane prior. Yeah, we had already done a platoon together before that.
Yeah, because we when we first all linked up, it was,
I can't remember. He does way better with the timeline shit. I can never remember the timeline.
Well, half the book was written by Mike and Shane. Most people, because I can't remember anything. But okay, so I don't. I guess I don't remember the first time. I just remember the influences he had on the new guys when I came back.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
I don't remember the first time you and I met either. I remember meeting him the first time.
Yeah, we met in a fucking supply locker when you were like, hey, fucking when he turns his back, you take every fucking thing you can. I was like, what?
I kept sending him to the back to look for some shit in my size, and there was some Vidmars right up front that I needed some of the shit out of there. And he's looking at me, he's like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, hey, every time he goes away, you take shit because they'll fucking hide shit from you.
That's right.
Supply always does that.
Yeah, they do.
So that was my first experience, which I didn't know what to think. I'm this fucking 18-year-old spanker fucking new guy. Like, this guy's telling me to steal shit. I'm not sure if I should do that. And then
did I jump into you guys' platoon?
You did
when you lost someone. That's when I met you guys. Yeah,
because I was in training.
You
were in training cell, and you'd done some training for us.
Yeah, and I was running combat diver and go plats. Yeah, and so I did all your go plat crap.
And you'd done medical over. For a lot of our shit.
That's right.
And then we needed another corpsman and
did somebody get booted or what was the deal with that?
What was that?
I don't remember if it was just a lapse in fucking quals where they were like, hey, we need another fucking corpsman. It was something to that degree.
I don't remember either.
Gotcha.
But we were already formed up and not real far because that workup for that platoon was fucking 22 goddamn months long. So
that was like my first at 8. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, we were a few months into the workup when you jumped in, so most of it was
and we did an ARG.
Yeah,
that's right. And I had already done an ARG prior.
Yeah, yeah, you were fairly fresh back from your original ARG.
That's what it was.
And then, so, the three of us have spent quite a bit of fucking time together.
Yeah.
Which, what's hard to believe for me, I don't know about you guys, but thinking that it was fucking 20 goddamn years ago
21.
when this was happening.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you feel like an old fuck. But
it may make you feel like an old fuck.
It makes you an old fuck. But
you are the oldest of us.
I am.
Yeah.
But to me, the neat thing about it, though, is just recounting some of the fucking stories. I've got some notes written down about some of the things that we went through with Glenn and just some of the other guys that we've since lost that we've done platoons with, and just that experience. To me, one of the things that I look back pretty fondly upon is having some time pre 9/11 under Clinton where it was very different, and then going through 9/11 and post 9/11 and having kind of that contrast. From your guys' standpoint, how do you look back at the time that we spent in a platoon, together and the things that we did? Is there anything that sticks out for either one of you guys in terms of things that you remember well or look back on?
I mean, for me, you guys already know this. I hit a lot in this book, and it, it's weird in the communities. When you do 20 years like I did, you end up with, these deposits of friends sprinkled throughout, right? And you're all good friends. And over time, it's not because you wear a trident or you did time together. It's because you're like-minded. And just like how most people's friendships last is because, hey, we all actually get along. We don't annoy each other.
Too bad.
Horribly.
Yeah. Or if we're doing it on purpose, that doesn't count. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those early years in the platoon life, before it became troops and squadrons and, and the way that it is now, these big monsters, and not to mention, everything was a little more lax back then, certainly makes it easier for guys to build really strong relationships through the camaraderie and the after hours stuff. Whereas these days, I was just talking to a guy running, all of your jump school stuff right now. And it was interesting. He was telling me a lot of these new guys now, because of this fear of getting in trouble and because of the hit the community's taken, they literally do their work for the day. They hit the gym and then they bury their faces in their devices, and they don't just to go, hey, you guys want to go out to dinner? It's not drinking and, hell raising. Right. It's, hey, do you guys want to go out for dinner? And guys are like, no. They're like almost gun shy now to that camaraderie aspect that's gone away. But I'd have to say, I mean, those early years and hell, the whole 20 years, you end up having that camaraderie piece that really you reflect on the most once you get out and you go, damn, it's kind of cool. And the reason why we're sitting here, the reason we went camping, you try to maintain that because it is, it's a world that no one else understands, that you can come together and be, the real you, for lack of better words, without judgment or any kind of other bullshit, and have some fun together.
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the things that kind of piggybacking onto that, thinking about, when I think back to my time in the Navy, and what I remember and what I kind of hold on to the tightest is the trips. It's the early time with both of you guys and the other guys, but just the trips to fucking Shaw's and fucking Lake Tahoe to Fallon or fucking whatever, just all the different trips that we take where it's just the 16 of us out doing fucking cool training in some cool remote part of the country, going out into that town, for dinner or to fucking blow off some steam or whatever. And like that element and that personality and camaraderie just doesn't fucking exist anymore.
No.
And to
it
me,
doesn't seem like it. Yeah. It doesn't seem like it.
I mean, and to me, like that's what makes the teams, the fucking teams, in my opinion. I mean, that's what gives you that team feeling is that you live together, you fucking die together type of thing.
And we had less distractions, right? We didn't have these cell phones and iPads and everything else and social media that I feel like is, taken hostage some of that stuff.
For sure.
And it's hamstrung a lot of people from really
living
the cultural experience of being a SEAL, where shooting bullets straight and body armor and night vision is one aspect, but the rest of it is the time you're hanging out, causing trouble and having fun.
Yeah.
For me, the big difference, because my time on my break in service there was a window there. So 94 to 98, there was a huge technological leap, both active duty and civilian. The internet didn't exist when I started college. There was an intranet on the campus where you could do email from the campus to other campus computers, and it was real limited to what there is now. But I alluded to it earlier, the change in personality for me from the East Coast to the West Coast was, on the East Coast, there's really nothing to do. There's not, from a 3-hour drive, you can't do everything you ever wanted to do outdoors like you have in San Diego.
Yeah.
So on the East Coast, the platoons,
that's where the disgruntledness came from.
No, it's an interesting disparity in camaraderie.
Fucking Hollywood.
The East Coast teams or the East Coast platoons at the time, because it was that same Vietnam era platoon structure. When you got done, you went and hung out with the boys. You went to somebody's house, or the JB's Gallery of Girls was on the way home for everybody, and so you went and drank and you went and hung out.
Yeah, and family and women came definitely second, third place.
Right. And so it was a completely different thing. I mean, I drank 9-10 nights a week.
10 nights a week.
Yeah, on the East Coast, because there wasn't shit to do.
I don't know why you failed calculus.
It's
as sharp as you seem.
Damnedest thing. What I did discover in college is that I'm the exact same personality, drunk or sober, so I don't drink anymore.
That's good.
But going back into a platoon as a senior E5 on the West Coast and feeling like I actually had something to say to guys that were new and young and having some influence and some sense of, I can teach these guys shit that they should know, was a completely different thing for me. And having a lot of guys, that first platoon was what, 10 of you guys? 10 new guys?
8.
Yeah. Yeah. Just having that ability to have that influence and actually teach what I thought should be taught was, I wanted to go get a commission so I could change the teams. And truly where you change the teams is at that level is with guys' individual performance and pride in workmanship.
No, for sure. I mean, when I think of and I would call it a fucking blessing, for me to be, there's that goddamn noise again.
Where the fuck does that come from?
I'm hearing reverb and
I'm getting some feedback in my system.
Bird's nest in here.
I can't help it.
Being in the teams from 18 to 30, that span of my life and being surrounded by you guys, by, our LPOs and chiefs and guys that had multiple platoons and whatever, just being around those guys and being, kind of taught or put under somebody's wing, so to speak, was something that honestly, I mean, you couldn't put a fucking price tag on it.
No,
and,
absolutely
and
No, we could. We've made you who you are today. Yeah. We want free origin for the rest of our life.
I'm gonna need some gravy from that.
A 10% finder's fee for everything that you're going on.
I just rather you said thank you and went about your day.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. All right, so I'd like to move into some of the book that the first part of Clint's book talks a lot about, shared time that we all kind of had together.
Yeah, it does.
This book, it's a new one out from Clint. He's got the 100 Deadly Skills that we talked about his first time on. In this case, it's called The Right Kind of Crazy. I love the title. I love the cover. I am curious, title-wise, where tell us about that.
We batted around probably 20 different titles, and then when I say we, that's me, ghostwriter, the editors, everybody involved. And for those that don't know, your publisher plays a big part on how these books, get built and how they're kind of ultimately put on shelves. But I knew I didn't want this to be the typical military memoir where it's just 100% operational and we're all knight in shining armor and we do nothing but good things for the world. And so
is that not what we do?
No, yeah, as you know. And I wanted the title to match, a lot of the actual content as best as possible. And I felt like that was definitely, and I got to say that was a group effort. The editor definitely played a role in us limiting it down to the right kind of crazy.
Well,
it's a fun read.
Yeah, it's a fucking great read. The subtitle is My Life as a Navy SEAL, Covert Operative, and Boy Scout from Hell. One of the things that I learned in here that I didn't fucking realize is that there's Boy Scout troops or like detachments almost in fucking Saudi. There was one, right?
Right. So the Boy Scouts of America is actually global. And
now it's just
Scouts of America.
Now it is, yeah.
So you're a scout.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I've been reduced down a couple of notches.
You are now gender neutral. You're welcome.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing is back then, and
back in my day. Who's doing it?
I think all the way up till just a few whatever. When did all that crap happen?
In the last year or two.
Couple years, yeah. So prior to that, I would have recommended scouting for anybody because it gave you a well-rounded foundation and a lot of different stuff. And I'd love to tell you that it somehow made my moral and ethical compass on the straight and narrow, but it didn't.
Now, what was it that did that?
So what did put you
absolutely nothing?
Straight and narrow.
Yeah. That's probably a quote from my dad. All I care about is you making good grades. You make good grades, you can do whatever you want. And I'm like,
sweet.
All right. What can I do with that comment?
Yeah.
But the Scouts are global, and we would that troop over there was pretty cool in the fact that you really just did the fun stuff. You didn't concentrate on all that, do a good deed daily crap. And, there's a lot to the Boy Scout oath and all that I never was fully sold on. I wasn't, one of those kinds of kids. Yeah. Some kids are, and they follow it to a T and they grow up and they're astronauts. And there's a book out there that talks about those that have maxed out their scouting career and then where it led to them professionally. So it's astronauts, congressmen, presidents, The
Illuminati.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
All Illuminati are Boy Scouts.
That's how you get in.
Yeah. Skull and Bones, Yale. I didn't go there.
Yeah.
But it's definitely got a little bit of that connection to, whether it's success or cults, it just depends on how you look at it.
I know back when there was a series of like tests and this company was hired when I was an instructor to try to like figure out what the secret formula was, and that was actually one of the things that
they've been doing that shit for so long.
Forever. But one of the common denominators were, it was almost like an eerie statistic of how many fucking people that made it through BUDS, were either Eagle Scouts or made it quite a ways in Boy Scouts, and it was one thing I never did, but it was interesting to see how many fucking team guys have a heavy Boy Scout background, which, I'm sure isn't an accident, but
yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I talk about one of my favorite times was going to Germany to Camp Freedom, where it was run by SF guys, and you spent, 2 weeks straight in a forest in the middle of nowhere, learning survival skills, truly learning them, and then putting them to the test. You're I was 10. I went every year. So
That's
I was
fucking
10,
cool,
11, 12, 13 years old and being put in the middle of
I suspect that was kind
nowhere.
of unique exposure.
Yeah, it was. I think so.
It's not a typical.
Every scout's not getting that shit.
No,
but yeah.
It's definitely growing up overseas exposes you to a whole lot of other things that, they have their versions here in the States without a doubt, but being put out there in the middle of nowhere and you're literally, your emergency blanket and a Swiss Army knife for 2 nights straight at that age.
Yeah.
Kind of takes you, when you get done with it, it takes you to the next level as far as confidence in yourself.
No, for sure. I mean, that's like at that age going through that. I mean, that's probably akin to fucking making it through goddamn Hell Week. Like you probably
it has
like
a little bit
badass.
Definitely at the end. And then I would also attribute the Order of the Arrow, which is unique to the Boy Scouts of America. Because keep in mind, Scouting is British. It was founded by a British spy who also happened to be a cross-dresser. So it's not actually weird that Scouting has gone full circle.
It was just a matter of time.
That was the commander's intent.
Yeah, exactly. So the Brits definitely were laying a foundation for, young boys, back in the day, to become very successful soldiers and spies with the curriculum of earning merit badges and everything that's led to. Now, of course, it's all changed. But Boy Scouts America has the Order of the Arrow, which follows. Once you get high enough in the scouting world, you can then do an initiation, if you will, to become part of the Order of the Arrow, and that in itself is another
Illuminati.
You're
Knights Templar.
Yeah, it's 2 or 3 days of complete silence. You're not allowed to talk, achieving a common goal with other people who are trying to become Order of the Arrow.
You guys can't talk.
No talking.
No shit.
You cannot communicate with one another, but you have to get the task
First
done.
rule of Fight Club, baby.
Don't talk about it. Don't talk about that shit.
But yeah, that's order. So you go through all that, and boom, you definitely have these moments where you're like, oh, I actually started, finished.
Yeah,
a little feeling of success.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's something that again I learned. There's a number of things in here. As long as I've fucking known you, as many years as we've spent sitting around with nothing to fucking do and telling stories,
shit.
There was still a bunch of shit in here. I found myself like double taking. Like, fuck, are you serious?
Who knew?
I wrote a few of them down that I'd like to talk about.
Oh, great.
Grandson of a German whore with a little Nazi blood mixed in. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was news sprung on us in high school. So my mom, it goes back to my mom. She was adopted and she had a twin out of Germany by an Air Force colonel and his German wife. And so they moved back to the States. They spent several years overseas. My mom's first language was German in an orphanage. Second language was French. English was her third language. Then they moved from base to base. And this is all on the tail end of post-World War II, rebuilding of Europe. And then they eventually made their way back to the States where she went, I think it was for middle school, the end of middle school, going into high school. And so she eventually, got knocked up by a guy who wanted nothing to do with her. Happened to be the base commander's son down at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. They then came and said, several weeks after I was born, they wanted to get rid of the problem. So get this, the guy, the base commander and his son,
you being the problem,
me being the problem, shows up and says, hey, we'd like to spend some time with Clint. And of course, my mom's like, oh, good. She was embracing it because the guy on the day I was born was like, I don't want anything to do with you. And by the way, I want a divorce.
Yeah.
And so
real stand-up guy.
Yeah. So my mom, was put through the ringer when it came to relationships and emotionally, no doubt about it. So she says, all right, yeah, if you want to spend time with him, of course. And so they take me to the United Way and leave me. And then my mom has to figure out where
the fuck is my son?
Where the hell is Clint?
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
We don't know what you're talking about.
He never existed. So anyway, so she ends up,
this
whether
is
it
not
was
the kid you're looking for.
hours or days later, she ends up finding me.
God
and
damn.
from then on, I probably became her like crown jewel and was very overprotective of me. So anyway, she ends up meeting my dad and but yeah, while we're in high school and this woman, this blonde hair, blue eyed lady comes knocking on the window. I'll never forget because I had just gotten done with school that day. It was after we moved back from Saudi and my mom starts, yelling whatever, get the fuck out of my house, get
off my lawn.
Yeah, exactly. Goes nuts. I look out my window and I see this woman go into the trunk of her car, pulling out all this paperwork, comes back to the door. Anyway, long story short, ends up proving that blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman was a long-lost sister and one of 12 kids that had been from the same mom and all put up in the same orphanage in Germany. All of these kids were adopted by different parents and then, sprinkled about the world. And so some of these kids were still in Europe, most of which were in the United States. And,
so you're on a lifelong trip
fucking,
right now to introduce yourself to them.
Yeah,
that's what you're doing now.
Yeah.
It's like fucking Hitler's breeding program.
Well, yeah. I mean, it had some. And so the big surprise was, hey, our mom was, she died in prison. My mom found out that her mom had died in prison and, had been a hooker for a portion of her life to just about anything that had money.
Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with that. It's the oldest profession.
So Americans, Nazis, you name it.
Anything's wrong with it?
That's for the viewers. They're judging right now. There ain't nothing wrong with that shit.
I can tell you,
this guy's a white supremacy.
For the people that are still tuned in, there's no judging going on right now.
Fucking good thing.
Yeah.
They tuned out when Shane was talking.
No, they didn't.
They're going to be wishing. They're going to be wishing they were still listening as soon as I.
Like a little kid. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Here's another thing that again, I was like, how the fuck did this never come up? That your mom was a fucking race car driver.
Oh yeah.
And B, that she was having this, long-term affair with another racer in the circuit or whatever, and you ending up because of that, and your dad, basically teaching down at College Station, and your mom being gone all the time. Is that at 15, is that you basically took your 5-year-old brother to raise. And hearing about fucking, you're taking him to school on a fucking motorcycle, just the stories. I'm like, how the fuck have we never talked about this? Like, is there a reason that you didn't share any of this? Like when we were in Platoon?
Did you never catch it? No. I caught some of that when you brought Beach back. I caught some of that shit, and I was like, no shit. And you were still kind of close to the vest about this is what's going on. For sure,
if we had talked about it, I'd fucking remember it.
I don't know. I mean, it was, maybe I didn't realize, you're still young when you're in the teams. You're young your whole career, really, if you think about it. But yeah, I never realized I didn't tell you guys. But yeah, it was raising Beach through high school. I was certainly making sure he was taken care of each day and each morning before I actually got to my own shit. And I still reflect on it, like, how the hell did I get through high school? Because
it's like keeping farm animals. You feed them before you feed you. It's really not that complicated.
It is. You're put in a position.
It's taking care of the dogs.
Yeah, and you don't even realize you're doing it. Is the reality of it, because it's your brother, and why you wouldn't? Who wouldn't do that? You know what I mean?
But so your dad would literally like. What's that?
I wouldn't do that.
I know you wouldn't. That's why we're friends. But so your dad would hand you a fucking wad of cash for the week. He'd bounce out of town. Your mom was fucking in and out. Some of the things I didn't realize, like I guess the impact that her lifestyle had on you, like where you kind of got to the point where you're just like, fuck this lady, basically, right? I mean, she really fucked your dad over from the sounds of it.
She did, yeah. I mean, the first time, you see your dad cry, it was because he caught her, and that was for me, being woken up in the middle of the night to your dad sitting on the edge of your bed, just totally down and out. Shit. Yeah. And, it was a very long build up to becoming, resentful of her and all her actions and everything she did to him. At the time, you don't realize what's going on to you, right? You just live it, and you're living what you think is the norm. And the norm was take care of your brother and get your ass to school kind of feeling. So, it was definitely the details in it all, though, and getting my mom involved in the interview piece of this book. That was, I think, good for her as much as it was for me, because you go through it all and you just realize, she had a lot thrown on her. And that we're not just talking when a lady shows up to your door and says, by the way, this is who our parents were. Yeah. It goes all the way back to being an orphan, and the psychology of that, not being hugged, kissed, or loved the first 18 months of your life when it's most crucial, leads to a certain kind of behavior. And so going through it all, it made me realize, her faults were just who she was. And then hell, and what I became out of it, in the end is a big piece of it too. Yeah. So it's not your average military memoir.
But it's perspective. You start looking at shit, and I think that's part of growing older, is you start to see shit for what it is as opposed to what you judge it to be at the time.
Right. Yeah.
My brother and I, you asked earlier how our relationship was growing up. We had a huge falling out when he got married and had a couple of kids because I thought he was being a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But a lot of the decisions that he made around that just baffled me.
Yeah.
What the fuck's the matter with you? You're my older brother. You're supposed to be setting the example, but near a decade of almost no talking at all.
Oh shit, it was that long.
Yeah. And then we finally started talking about it because I was old enough to go, all right, maybe there was something that I missed.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, my brother was a much better human being than I ever gave him credit for, because he did shit I never would have done.
Yeah.
Given the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting take on, everybody's got their story. Some of them are sad, some of them are not, but everybody deals with what they have based on what they have at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the anchor to it all, when you talk about team guys, is a majority of team guys I knew and I grew up with in the community all came from broken homes.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting common denominator that.
And when I read that, I kind of chuckled like, yeah, that's actually not far off.
Yeah.
That's not far off of the mark.
It's an interesting kind of piece. And I'm curious how is that across special operations? I bet
it's pretty
I suspect it's prevalent. And I think I suspect it has something to do with the idea of proving yourself.
Yeah. Maybe, or never being satisfied with, with
I'm not good enough, so I got to do more to show that I'm good enough.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dr.
Phil.
Yeah, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's the tissues?
Yeah.
They're under the desk by Shane's fucking knees.
I'll be done with them in just a minute.
Yeah, it's good. As long as it's not that chick blowing you again, it'll take 4 fucking hours. Is this thing on?
Keep going, Shane. Yeah.
Christ. All right. So the issues that you kind of dealt with, I guess one thing I was curious about, unfortunately, your mom passed away earlier this year. Did she have a chance to read kind of the essentially the finished product?
She didn't. The goal was so that she could read it, but the United States fucking government, the Pentagon specifically, fucked my mother out of reading this book.
Yep.
So she never got a chance.
Anal retentive ass bags.
Did she have an idea in going through it, kind of what was going to be?
She knew, yeah, she knew. She was, my mom was definitely was the right and the wrong kind of crazy. And she embraced it without a doubt. She wouldn't be offended by it. In fact, when I showed her the illustration of the very lonely environment, top of the illustration is a kid on a motorcycle with a much smaller kid on the back, driving through, rural Texas to go to my grandparents, because that's where I would drop Beej off anytime I needed a break. And then the bottom of the page is an illustration of my mom standing proudly next to her race car, the race car helmet, and the things that she was doing while I was doing that.
Right.
And I did get a chance to show that to her, and she laughed and she loved it. She was like, this is great.
No shit.
I love this illustration, Clinty. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, most moms would probably be like,
I'm so sorry, son.
Almost feel bad. But
Almost.
she embraced it. And me and my brother definitely learned to just be like, it's just mom. You don't get to pick and choose your moms. You just accept the mom you get. And as much as there was, some fucked up decisions, there was a lot of good ones too. I mean, she definitely was an over mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like way over the top with everything.
Did you guys ever have kind of a, after years or whatever, have kind of a come to Jesus where she apologized or anything like that? Or?
Oh, she was doing it, every time we talked.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt bad for a little while that I didn't accept it. I was kind of rough with her.
Like,
for
whatever.
Years. Yeah, for years I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, fine, whatever.
But definitely since getting out of the Navy, where you communicate more regularly, we were able to, we were fine. Everything was good.
Yeah.
And all the way up to her deathbed, literally, things were at least balanced and civil, and everything was healthy, and that's always a good way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
one of the things that I always remember you being good at and kind of messing with, even in the platoons, was sleight of hand type shit, magic tricks, and making the coin disappear and making my sack disappear.
This will only hurt for a minute.
Yeah, just fucking,
don't hold your breath.
Yeah. What I didn't realize is how far you took that in high school in terms of basically cleaning people out and like robbing people fucking blind.
It's the criminal.
I never knew you were such a klepto either.
And it wasn't just to steal shit. It was what I realized after was, you definitely an appetite for risk. Because my dad, like I said, he would leave me with the money I needed, but when the weekends came around, I wasn't like a lot of my high school buddies were drinking and all that was like the priority. I was definitely the driver. I'd drive everybody around. Once we got to the party, I'd head straight to the master bedrooms and
just clean them out.
I got to the point where I knew the fake gold from the real gold, the real Rolexes from the fake Rolexes, mainly because growing up overseas, you're exposed to all the fake stuff, fake Rolexes especially. So you look at the second hand, you know the weight of it in your hand. And then at pawn shops back then weren't recording things the way they do now. They didn't have CCTV.
Fucking technology.
Yeah, the technology.
And they weren't taking your ID on everything.
Right, they were not.
They didn't give a shit. You're how old? I don't care.
And most of these guys definitely knew, right? I'm coming in, on a Sunday after the weekend is almost over. And
what are you, 16? I'm
weighing
15 and a half.
Yeah. They're weighing the gold. They don't even care. There was no age limit on that stuff. So they're weighing the gold. And they're looking at it, and I know that I'm going to get a lot for that bracelet. That's a man's bracelet.
Yeah.
They'd be like, $800? I'd be like, sure. So take my $800 and go. But yeah, I mean, it all started with magic because sleight of hand and deception and all that, and doing stuff right in front of people, and they don't even know it, became a thrill for me. And
well, to me, the foreshadowing, of turning that into a career ultimately is that hiding in plain sight and doing that same thing on a whole different fucking level on behalf of Uncle Sam's pretty fucking wild.
And that is the best part. And I tell people
where the risk is infinitely bigger.
Right. Well, the risk is bigger, but the biggest piece is if you're into bad shit, just pick the right side of the line to do it on. A lot of kids go down the path of being a bad guy in the United States. As soon as you join the military, it gives you all right to be a bad guy in everybody else's country.
Yeah, on behalf of the United States.
Right. Yeah. You get paid to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And that's
well. We get paid really well.
It's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
There's worse ways to go.
Yeah. I also, again, knowing you as long as I have, didn't realize that there was a bit of a romantic element in you joining the Navy and just basically getting tired of, we're using air quotes, Carrie's shit. We all know her real name, but getting to the point where you told her that you loved her and she said thanks, and so you're like, well, fuck this chick, I'm gonna join the Navy.
That's a solid reception.
Yeah, but then I went on for years after that. Yeah, obviously, got married, and there's a reason for everything, and she always was who she was, and not in a good or bad, not in a. She just is. She's always been the steady line, right? And her personality has not wavered one bit. And Carrie is Carrie, and I got to hand it to her. She's always been exactly who she is, and I was the one that kind of
changing and evolving and growing.
I loved her to death, and was willing to do anything, and I explain all that in the book. And eventually, I do get to the point where, like, okay, I'm the only one chasing this person. I'm not being chased back at all, and so I joined the Navy. And
does she remember it that way? Like, would she say, yeah, it's pretty accurate? Or she'd be like, that's fucking bullshit?
No, yeah, she would argue it to a certain degree. I think deep down she kind of knows certain aspects of that, but she would tell you, no, I loved you. I always loved you, and we were always dating. And I'm like, no, we weren't really dating. It was me trying to talk you into dating me. But it was... and I was young, dumb, and stupid. So, I didn't know any different because I hadn't had this big dating background. I don't think most people that age group do. And it was more traditional too, where you didn't have,
Tinder.
You didn't have all this other crap, right?
The immediacy
when you
of
met
connection.
someone, and you had a connection, you felt like, well, I better grab her before somebody else does, right? And that's what drove relationships back then.
Yeah.
And then you get in, then I went to the Navy.
Handwritten letters.
And she did. She sent handwritten letters that basically goes, okay, I made a mistake. I do love you. I didn't know what I had until it was gone. And hook, line, sinker, I went back and put a ring on her finger.
And 2 weeks later, she got my response.
And so then we ended up getting married.
Yeah.
And, and then I realized what I felt, and her opinion would be different, but I felt like I was still chasing her all the way up to the day I divorced her.
No shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What would she remember it as in contrast?
I think she would just focus more on, well, I was a military wife. I supported you. I did this. I sacrificed that, which she did. But there was the other piece of reciprocation. That's probably the most important word I got out of a 14-year marriage is it's important to reciprocate.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like she was ever reciprocating, and she would relate it directly back to sex. And yeah, that's a big part of it. But there's other aspects that are important too that, we just never met halfway on.
So it's not just about the blowjob.
Are you sure?
Yeah, are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. One thing that I've got a couple of excerpts in the book, one of which, there's a fucking million team guy books out there. One of the things I like about this.
Don't be dramatic. There's not that many yet.
There's probably over that.
He's being sarcastic.
Yeah.
What?
You can't see it in his face.
I can taste it.
Yes.
There was actually two things. The illustrations in this book are fucking awesome.
Solid.
And a couple of them, I mean, I was sitting there literally laughing fucking out loud. People are looking at me like I'm a dipshit.
I love all that dumbass redacted shit.
And don't interrupt.
Really, does that bother you?
Oh, it's terrible. Been dealing with for my whole adult life. The illustrations are fucking amazing. Was it Tim? Is that the guy's name? Tom. Yep. Phenomenal fucking artist, and it really captures a lot of the stories similar to the one that your mom commented on. But there's, we've all read, lots of different stories about buds and what it does, why it's there, why it's the way that it is. And I got to tell you, there's one excerpt in your book on page 63 that to me summarizes what Buds is about and why, I would argue, better than any fucking book that I've come across, in my over 20 years of reading books about the teams and about Buds and whatever. And it goes like this. The overemphasis on Buds in the public imagination puts too much attention on the physical demands of the job. If that were all there were to it, the only requirement would be a CrossFit certification. The truth is, being able to do 100 push-ups a minute doesn't count for dick on the battlefield. You're breeding warriors. What you want is the guy who's going to show up when you need him to be with his weapon ready instead of shitting his pants in the corner. And it helps if he's not some dipshit you're going to have to spend months with in very close quarters. Having the mental and emotional fortitude to get through the toughest training on earth is a pretty good indicator of suitability for the job. But the specifics of the actual training don't really matter so much. What's more interesting is that by the end of the course, you all become the same guy. You could take a kid who came out of a trailer park and a Harvard graduate and put them through Buds, and by the time you come out on the other end into a SEAL platoon, they're the same person. Physically, the big guys get smaller, the small guys get bigger. Performance-wise, everybody's at the top of their game. And after making it through a course designed to break you, you have this confidence that's borderline cocky, combined with a humbleness that comes from knowing you're never going to be the best man in the crew. The smartest guys realize they're not that fucking smart. The dumbest guys realize that they've actually got some brains. Anybody who counters that attitude usually doesn't make it through.
Did you write that shit?
Yeah, well,
Damn. I did.
I've been known to write a book or two.
Damn.
Yeah.
But to me, like, the thing that really sticks out of that is the confidence that borders on cocky, while contrasted by a humility that realizes that there's always you're surrounded by guys that are better than you.
Yeah. No doubt.
But to me, like, there's no better way to put that process into a fucking paragraph than I think you did there. I think it's really awesome. Is there anything you would add to that, or you want to quit while you're ahead?
No, I think you hit it. The takeaway is that the teams does a good job always making you feel like the new guy, and because you're always the new guy, whether you're at your 4-year mark, your 8-year mark, or hell, even when I retired. you still feel like the new guy because of the culture, and it works to keep people in check. It increases your performance and it keeps you safe.
Yeah.
As long as you always think you're the new guy. The guys that think they are not the new guy any longer are the ones that usually need to go away, or they go away on their own accord in some form or fashion.
Or they create issues within the group that everybody thinks they're the new guy.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that I would add to that I know we're all big proponents of, and I hate to see that it's missing now, is hazing.
Yeah.
That's a huge component to that. And for sure, just like with, compulsion, with children, or, circumstances, consequences with coworkers, I mean, whatever, is that there has to be a fucking middle ground. Like, you can't just be a total fucking abusive prick on the same, or in the same vein, like that tool being used appropriately and from a timing standpoint impeccably. I don't think that there's a better tool to at least police our own. And I don't think you'd see the issues that you've seen here as of late, had we still had the ability to take a motherfucker behind the berm and straighten his ass out, because they just don't do that anymore.
I think the issues would still be there, but they'd be less, way less obvious because of that self-policing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think hazing, and I talk about it in there, there's two reasons to do it: celebration or correction, right?
Yeah.
And if you need to correct someone, you haze them, but it's in a governed way. It lets them know that, hey, we mean business. This isn't a cubicle environment. This isn't an office job. This is go overseas and kick people's asses. And we need to know that, especially new guys, are going to show up for that endeavor. But a lot of times that gets lost, and some people haze out of control and injure people. And hell, on the East Coast, they killed a couple of people. So it was, over the years, hazing has gone away, unfortunately, but it's the greatest way to keep each other in check.
The new guy mentality is a solid way to catch a guy real quick too. We had one in that first platoon at 3 that was always, hey, new guy this, hey, new guy that.
Yeah.
And walked in the platoon space with me and another guy that went through Bud's nearly 30 classes ahead of me. Like, well, fucking new guys needs to dump the trash in here. And I looked at him and he looked at me. I was like, yeah, new guy, go ahead and get the fucking trash out of here. He goes,
exactly.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Wrong room.
Yep. We're all new guys.
I mean, everybody's a new guy to somebody.
That's right.
Yeah,
but speaking of both hazing and the eloquence of the illustrations, how well you can get that in there. You're going to have to check out YouTube or just go buy the fucking book.
Go buy the fucking book.
I would love for Clint to, as you zoom in on this story now, if you could tell the story about getting your nose taped to another guy's sack and asshole.
Yeah, so that was definitely my big hazing. And another note about hazing before I tell you my favorite hazing story was, if you never got hazed and you're a team guy, that just means no one liked you. Yeah. No one liked you enough or cared about you enough to actually haze you. The people that get hazed are the guys that you want to excel. You want them to do better. You expect more out of them. And if it's for celebration, getting married, it's your birthday, whatever it is, then of course, you never got hazed. Or lying about getting married.
That was one of the best ones ever.
That's a nice inside joke.
So it's, no one cares. But for me, it was one of the most humiliating, disgusting hazings probably that I'd ever been involved in. Yeah. But anyway, we're stinting at Shaw's. We're in the cleaning room. I'm a new guy, first platoon. We knew the hazing hadn't come yet, but we had no idea it was going to happen right then and there. We're cleaning our MP5s. We noticed that the weapons cleaning room slowly emptied out. It was just me and another guy standing there. We both happen to be new guys. And just as it dawns on us, the doors bust open. Guys in their flight suits, balaclavas, and they're rolling in on us, tackle us. Of course, you fight the best you can because no one wants a pussy in their platoon that doesn't fight back. So you try to hit somebody in the head. You make somebody say ouch, but, it takes seconds, and before you know it, you're hogtied. And then the real fun begins. And so for us, it was stripping us down butt naked. It's winter at Shaw's, so it's about 30, 40 degrees outside. And once we're down butt naked, then we are put into the 69 position. And, my face is tucked up into my buddy's balls, taint, and butthole. And then his is tucked in between my balls, taint, and
Who got
butthole
hard first?
In that order.
I did. Oh, wait.
No, not right now, Shane.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We were both lucky that it was cold outside. But yeah, no boners that night. So then they tape us all together into this position. And then you hear someone go, let's get, keep in mind, people are shit-faced. And that's when it's dangerous.
It's the best mix.
Nobody gets drunk and does that shit.
And so then someone's like, get the mini blasting machine. And you're like, oh, God.
Fuck.
And so, our asses are exposed. They put the leads. And for those of you who don't know, a mini blasting machine it's a handheld crank that basically creates an electrical current to set off explosives. And so the leads on the very end put out a nice little shock, great for hazing. Enough to make your muscles constrict hard.
About like getting tased, really.
Yeah, getting tased.
A lot of voltage, no amperage.
That's right. Yeah. And so they tape they basically duct tape the leads to each butt cheek, and they wind these things up, right? And it's like a trigger on these things. Once they get to a certain point, it releases all the energy, and it makes your ass clench, right? So now my face is in his ass.
Clenched.
As it clenches around to where for audible, it's like this. So if my face is in there, it's like, so by the time they're done, if people don't know this, like buttholes like to almost inhale, like they kind of suck things in. So my nose, and if you look, it's pointy. It's got a little bit of girth to it.
Again, I'm going to throw in the people that are still listening probably do know that.
It's nothing like Mike's nose.
They're also looking at yours.
So
I can rate people with my nose.
Yes, you could. And somehow my nose, penetrated his butthole through all of these contractions.
Somehow.
And it wasn't fun. And then, that was just the beginning. Later, you get, Tabasco sauce pouring down your urethra, which is a reminder for about a week straight that happened. And it goes on and on. But like I said, if you don't get hazed, nobody cares about you. Yeah. That's love right there in the teens.
It is. Yeah. And the picture on fucking 69 appropriately. Did you catch that?
I did not.
Yeah. So it's on page 69 is you 69 in your fucking buddy.
It's awesome, man.
I was like, that can't be a fucking coincidence.
Yeah, no, it probably wasn't. It's probably somebody in the chain of building a book put that there.
Great.
Yeah,
all those illustrations are also solid on the electric version.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how you get it. I've got it on a Kindle.
The electric version?
Yeah. The electric version.
The electric version.
Yeah. Most people call it the e-reader.
It's the technology, okay?
Yeah, got it.
On that fancy computer you got there.
On that screen.
No, I have to give Tom Mandrake, the guy who did the illustrations in this, he did the whole Batman versus Superman series for DC. He does some Marvel work. But yeah, if you're a comic book guy and you love the superhero world, this book sure illustrates more real life SEAL stuff, but it does it in a great way. Yeah.
Speaking of hazing stories, Shane, I know the listeners would love to hear your favorite hazing story.
It's not about me.
That's fine.
It's about a guy in a platoon on the East Coast.
Send it.
He came in late during the workup with a ton of attitude. And we were at one of the woods training areas, land warfare training areas in Northern Virginia. And the Doors movie was recently released. So time-wise, 92, 93. And we knew it was coming. He did not. And so we had the Doors playing in the background for about 20 hours.
It was like fucking SEER school mind game shit. Huh?
While he was summarily stripped and taped to a tree outside because it was just him. The rest of us were pretty tight, and he was the outsider, and he just didn't want to gel.
Yeah.
And there was some drinking involved, obviously, and we got pretty rough with him. But it shifted his whole psyche overnight. It was literally that fast, because the next morning we did there's an outdoor O course up there. It's an Army O course, runs like 2.5 miles of forest.
Yeah.
An obstacle every quarter, half mile, some shit like that. When we got done, he had his shirt off and he was chafed and bruised. And the OIC had no idea what had gone on because it was below his pay grade. He didn't need to know about it. He's like, hey, the the fuck happened to you? He's like, nah, I slipped and fell on an obstacle.
Yeah.
Never an issue again.
Oh, sure.
Love that guy to death.
Huh.
Yeah, he's fucking awesome. And I suspect he's retired by now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Last I heard he was in Hawaii, but yeah, fucking great guy. He needed the catalyst to get on board with the platoon.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's an effective fucking tool, no doubt about it. I am curious. One of the things I heard, I never saw it firsthand, but did either of you guys ever participate in sticking a dude's sack through a fence and padlocking it on the other side?
I'm not.
Never did that one. Definitely heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, maybe we'll try that.
It sounds like fun. We should do that right after.
We'll get some.
There's a fence out there.
Some after hours footage on YouTube of that.
Fuck yeah.
All right. So moving into, again, about half of the book, really kind of is dedicated to time where the three of us were together. And I always remember you having moved your brother out. I didn't realize it was that fucking severe though,
Oh yeah.
But, again, like I'm thinking back, I remember I was in the platoon with you. I had no idea like that you were going through all that at the time, and thinking of, trying to project and put myself in your shoes. I'm like, holy fuck, how did you deal with that? I also love the way that you did deal with it, and that you just basically just knocked the fuck out of him every time he, it's like,
until he got the message.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about
so
bringing him in. And
for my, Beej, he definitely, as a little kid, he had it. He had it rough, right? I mean, that's what it boils down to. So, he was in a very impressionable age when your parents have issues, and I'm taking care of them. It definitely led down a path that once our dad passed away, which was, just after I got in the teams and got my trident. And we are, just to put in perspective for people, we're 11 years apart. So he was still very young when my dad passed away, and my mom, couldn't control this kid who was acting out. And then my mom dealing with all her own stuff too. So I don't know what I was thinking, because in retrospect, it probably wasn't that smart, but I was like, all right, I'm going to step in, get involved, go grab my brother. I picked him up from school one day and then just started driving back to San Diego. And he had no idea what the hell was going on. I just told him, you're not even going to get to tell your friends goodbye. You're just out of here. And so, brought him out to San Diego, and, here I am, you guys remember we're doing a workup, and I'm like bringing my brother along. You couldn't get away with that crap these days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just different times. And so, I'm bringing him to training evolutions, and he's like sitting in the corner while we're doing our thing. And, I mean, what a great, opportunity for him, but, for us,
hindsight.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of embarrassing to a certain degree. But it had to be done. So that was a whole summer. He basically I had him coming to work with us. And then once he started school, he started getting in trouble again. And then eventually we deployed. And as the book covers, standing on the deck of the USS Cole, on a satellite phone, having to yell at him.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, just like, get your shit squared away. Jesus.
Fuck.
And,
but especially given the fact that where you were at and what we were responding to, and you're having to deal with that.
Yeah. And I mean, if that's the biggest takeaway with the book, is that, a lot of them paint this picture of go overseas and, kick doors and everything. It's like success stories every night, and they don't talk about the flip side to things where your family and everybody else is paying the ultimate price back home. So that's, the piece of reality for me was, hey, I'm having to manage my little brother, because if I hadn't, or I felt like if I hadn't, one, he'd go off the rails and become nothing in life. And nobody wants that for a family member. So anyway, there was points of it that were a pain in the ass, without a doubt. But yeah, you're right. There was times when I literally had to choke him out on a regular basis, just because he was such a rebelling teenager who had lost his father, and that's what it boiled down to. And so that led to a lot of conflict between Carrie and I, and ultimately laid the foundation to the marriage's demise, because she just couldn't see what I was seeing. That was the biggest argument. It was like, I'm doing this for my brother. You would do the same for yours, wouldn't you? Right, and it's like, but she had good points. I had good points. There was just, no meeting halfway on it.
Yeah. There was one story in particular where he got fucking drunk, and he was what, like 16, 17?
Yeah. Here I am bringing him to San Diego, thinking that would help, and because he was kind of getting down that path in Texas. Yep. Bring him to San Diego. You know, we were living in the Scripps Ranch area, which is nice, and it's kind of peaceful and suburbia. But yeah, he was exposed to all the same crap. Doesn't matter where. That age group is just going to get involved. And so he's getting drunk, coming home, wasn't abiding by the curfew. Meanwhile, we're halfway around the world. Yeah. And, you know, she's having to deal with this crap. And so, but there was a point when I did get back, and I'm thinking, okay, he's got to start listening now that I'm actually physically here.
Yeah. He's gonna start listening.
And not threatening him from 8,000 miles away. So, but yeah, he didn't listen, and he was so drunk that the night that he came in, Carrie was very quick to jump in his face and kind of, because she was over it at that point, right? She had gone through a whole deployment dealing with his antics, but got in his face, and it looked like he was going to lunge at her, you know, all angry, drunk angriness. So I stepped in the middle and basically choked him out, knocked him out, threw him into the bathtub, and left him there. Yeah. And so the next morning he wakes up, and he's like, I hear downstairs yelling and screaming going on, and he is convinced that she's the one that choked him out, punched him, and threw him in the bathtub. And so I had to go downstairs in the middle of the kitchen,
choke him out, and punch him, and throw him in the bathtub,
and choke him out again, and be like, "Dude, that was me, not her." And he just kind of looks at me with this daze as his face turns purple, and then that was that. But he finally cleaned up his act, and
well, he's got his shit together now, which is promising. I mean, because he's got a great career, and
he's a good kid.
You know, so it is neat to see. But I think it just further reinforces, like, there is a time and a place for a fucking ass beating. You know, there are kids and people that need that. You know, but you couldn't do that now. You know,
no, of course not.
You'd get fucking arrested.
It just depends on the environment you're in.
But some kids are their actions are basically, hey. In lack, they don't know it, but in lack of better word, they're saying, I need structure, I need discipline. Yeah. When they act like that, that's some of them. And when you give them that, it's the cure to all problems. It really is. But
and it's the same thing with dogs. And the problem is that, you know, most people assume that it's never okay because of the people that use that on everybody, and it's not for everybody, you know.
Right.
Because if you use that on a dog or a child or a brother or whatever, where that's not the right answer, then it makes things worse, and it is abusive. You know, but there is certainly a time and a place for jerking a knot in somebody's fucking ass. Anyway, so that deployment was pretty fucking epic. 22-month workup. We jump on a C-130. We go to Hawaii. We go to Australia. We go to Bahrain. The USS Cole gets fucking bombed. We jump on the Tarawa, haul ass down there, and now we're playing babysitter on the Cole for 2 months. I know, you know, for me, at that point, I think I was 21 at that point. I had just turned 21 right before we deployed. But what is your guys' recollection of that platoon and deployment and the Cole and the Libo and all of those things?
Fucking cruise box PT.
Yeah.
Holy shit, did we move our gear a lot of times on that deployment.
Yeah. People don't know that part of the job where it's load and unload again.
You touch on that. Something else that you touched on, because I've read it as well, is the psychology of it. It didn't dawn on me where we were headed at that time. Like apparently most of the intel community as well. What was actually going on and what it was leading up to. Yeah. It was just another day at work to me.
Yeah, thinking about the long-term impacts that the Cole being bombed had, and we were right there.
That was a way bigger deal than I gave it credit for at the time. Yeah. It was just being at work.
Yeah, I think so. At the time, for me too, it was like I remember it being surreal and kind of like, holy shit, man,
that really happened.
That destroyer is sitting on its side on a dolphin pier and like
a house-sized hole in the side of it.
Right, surrounded by a whole bunch of bad people. You know? And if you actually brought up some things that I had forgotten that never even made it in the book, was the little mini shipboarding we did. There was a vessel inbound, and there was intel that said, hey, there's a follow-on attack because they want to sink it. Yep. They don't want to just disable it. And so Mike and I had boarded it, and there was a Yemeni soldier with his hand on his gun, and it was a very contentious point in the whole process where, Yemen had its guns pointed at us, and we're like, what are you doing? I'm like, where the fuck are these people?
We're protecting
pointing?
you.
Yeah. We're protecting our asset, but you guys are pointing your guns at us.
Right.
And now you got this ship headed straight for us after there was fair warning that anything comes within 100 yards is getting lit up.
Yeah.
And so we intercept it, board it, and all that. And I'd forgotten that until you mentioned it, And
Well, yeah, I remember it just because it was just you and I on the on the fantail. Like he was standing there with this cocky fucking look on his face, and then he reached down and put his hand on his fucking Beretta or whatever the fuck pistol it was on his service belt, and you and I just went and fucking flooded MP5s right in his fucking grill, like, dude, fucking try it,
pull it.
Do it. And I wish a motherfucker would,
right,
and
of course we all do,
yeah.
It's like that. Send a dog, motherfucker. I'll kick his ass.
Yeah.
I was kidding.
Yeah. Screaming for your mom.
Yeah.
400 stitches later. I mean, there's so many little details like that on deployment, one of which you touch about in the book, and this is a good Glen story, is where he mashed his dick between two fucking 45-pound plates.
A motherfucker and his dick. He could not keep that thing out of trouble.
Yeah, I know. God rest his soul. Glen's dick got him in trouble more than once.
Glen's dick got a lot of attention.
Lifting weights on a boat that rocks back and forth.
I tore my fucking groin on that same deployment.
Fucking
I think we all have
loose gym shorts.
Yeah.
Running down. What the fuck's going on with Glen? Look at this shit. Ugh.
Oh yeah, that was like
That was horrible to look at.
that thing. I was like, damn,
that looked like it hurt.
Like a fucking.
I made him function tested and everything. I was like, all right, first pee, second jerk off, and then we're like, all right, we're good.
Yeah. Fucking swollen purple
shit.
mushroom.
Jesus.
But the other thing that was taking place was the beat-off Olympics that you coincidentally talk about with our good pal Shane. What was the fucking? Was it out of pure boredom?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Just cause.
And self-induced. It was his own. It was his own Olympic campaign. No one else.
We were all competing. You guys just didn't know you were competing.
Oh well, yeah, that's true. It was his own.
That's how you justified it.
That's right. Yeah.
I got to beat these guys.
So what was the numbers again? They're probably different than in the book.
I don't know how far your numbers are off, but it was a 24-hour window. I think your hours are a little long, and I think I managed 12 or 14 in that 24 hours. It was not quite one an hour.
Yeah. It's something like that.
Absurd.
I mean, it was like dust at the end. It was actually kind of painful at the end. It really wasn't even fun anymore. It was just to prove that I could do it again.
But I kept going anyway.
But it was just to prove that I could do it again.
The one of the other things that it wasn't in the book, but I remember and frankly marveled at was that you fucking trained for a goddamn Ironman triathlon on the ship.
That's right.
Yeah, I got the bug in college. I did sprints and halves.
I was supposed to do it with you. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And then you didn't.
Yeah. And something happened.
Who's the smarter one?
If you could just tell a little bit about how you went about it.
So I got into triathlon in college because I knew I had to stay in shape to go back into the teams, and I had never done it. It seemed like a good idea, and there was a kid that was already in the ROTC unit that was doing little sprints. I was like, fuck, I'll try that. And so I bought a cheap bike, and I could already swim. The teams had got me to where I could run okay. Biking was not that big a deal. So I started doing sprints, and I think the teams is still doing the Super Frog. Yeah. At the time, it was all done at North Island. It was all just the community. And with sponsorship from a team guy, you could get somebody outside in, but it was real limited.
Yeah.
And I did that all 4 years of college. I went out to San Diego and did the Super Frog, which is a half. And I always thought maybe one day I'll do a full. And that deployment, there was a warrant officer on that on the Duluth that had done, 4 or 5 fulls. And he mentioned Taupo, New Zealand, which is the second oldest Ironman. Hawaii's the only one that's been done more times. It's done in a freshwater lake, volcanic freshwater lake. And I never really cared for the saltwater swim. You mentioned how many team guys fucking hate the ocean. So the idea of doing an Ironman in a freshwater lake was attractive to me. And I had a mag trainer. We had the CB shelters on the boat. And so I set up a mag trainer and ran on the treadmill.
Well, and to me, what's impressive about that is you didn't swim that whole time, really.
When we went through Bahrain on our way home, when we were Dubai.
Yeah, I mean, you hit a swimming pool a handful of times, but otherwise you were on a stationary bike trainer.
Yeah, for 4 to 6 hours a day.
What was it, a 5x7?
12 by 12. Those CB shelters were 12 by 12, but I mean, they were tiny little fucking. It had all my air gear in it and just enough room for a bike with no front wheel mounted to an ammo can on a mag trainer.
For those of you that make excuses about how you can't get to the gym, I don't want to
shut the fuck up.
But so you went to, we get back and you go on fucking leave. You go to New Zealand and you finished it.
Yeah.
What, you remember your time?
12:36.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's just finishing one is an impressive feat, but training for it on a fucking deployment on a boat, man, that's a pretty fucking cool story, I think.
It is. Good job, Shane.
Yeah.
Thanks,
nice
buddy.
nice fucking
I
work.
appreciate it. You guys make me feel so special.
Yep. So then we get back, and we all stayed in the same platoon, and we got back in February of 2001, and then we weren't forming back up for our next platoon until January. So we had 11 months of going to schools and fucking off. We did a season on the fucking Navy pentathlon team. Clint, what did you do in that time? Is that where you went back to 18?
Medical school.
Yeah, that's when he went to long course.
Yeah, okay.
A whole bunch of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Paramedic, physical, all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's when you came back, we needed a fucking LPO, and you came in.
Yeah.
You didn't need one.
Yeah.
You had one.
Well,
He had one.
You were
he just couldn't make E6
You
in
were at the
time.
helm.
I made it just after you.
Yeah. So I made it because
IDC.
honor. Yeah, I got honor man out of that course, and you're automatically promoted, and then
And it was like
yeah,
3 weeks before that cycle, and I
Right.
finally made it.
yeah.
And so the interesting thing is during that big period, that's when 9/11 happened. And you talk about in your book, you were driving across the bridge. I was basically in the same boat. I was on my way to fucking, the team. Do you remember what the fuck were you doing?
I was dating a girl that lived in Coronado, and I was at her place, and her roommate woke us up.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look at what the fuck's going on TV. I'm like, what the fuck is up here? Jeez. And then I was like, oh, maybe I ought to go to work.
Yeah.
Might be time.
No, for sure. I mean, it was a sobering time. I mean, not that we hadn't already been, overseas and done shit for real, but it just certainly put a new fucking twist on everything. And then we jump into platoon, and now it's not that we weren't training for war before, but for sure it put a level of seriousness to it that none of us had experienced before. And so then we end up going to Guam. Basically, we were slated as a Pacific Command platoon, basically not slated to go to the Middle East. But after we'd been there for a few months, and we went to Singapore and some other places around doing training, and went to Hawaii for a couple of weeks, and
Philippines.
In the Philippines for a little over a month.
That was a good time.
But then all of a sudden it was, hey, Iraq's probably going to kick off. You guys fucking go there, and Team 5 came and backfilled us and was super pissed. But so the three of us, in conjunction with Glenn and a couple others who are no longer with us, we end up going to Iraq. What is your guys' kind of the way that you recall between what you cover in your book and just your experience in that first taste of legitimate fucking sustained combat environment?
Yeah, I thought one, I found it interesting, and it's only in reflection that you go like how slow but fast it moves, right? Everything is, we were, this hodgepodge crew that had no real mission because the leadership at the time had no idea what to do with us and how to employ us in a conventional war. And that was the biggest hang up of our whole time there. Eventually those things got worked out, obviously, with with these 10 and 15 years of just sustained combat. But at the beginning, nobody knew what the fuck to do with special operations back then. So
fucking 30 years of no combat will do
that.
Yeah.
So everybody needed a couple of years to knock the dust off. But I just, it's kind of, at this point, it's blurry for me. And that's why I leveraged you guys a lot and other people to help put the book together. But, I just remember, sleeping under those Humvees. I remember us sometimes, the time we were sitting around in a couple of sandstorms because, with our thumbs up our ass, like, what the fuck do we do now? It's just, we had lawn chairs. We had these tents that were bought last minute in Kuwait City and that we were carrying around with us.
Filipino mafia deal. God damn, that was fun.
And we were just these nomads roaming Iraq, hoping to be put into things that, would satisfy our hunger for combat. And it kind of worked, it kind of didn't, in some portions. But when you really compare, when you're going 24/7 for the time that we were there, I mean, that's equivalent to a whole lot of the hours that guys now spend in operations, right? I mean, they can go a whole deployment and their hours of actually operating not add up to our limited time of 24/7, right? I mean, it was sustained. It was surreal to see. Remember when we were crossing Kuwait and into Iraq, the lineup to our left and to our right of artillery and that true just presence. Force. I mean, like the howitzers, the tanks. I mean, there was a distinct line as far as the eye could see of, the Marines that we were embedded with. And then you knew just beyond that to the west was the Army. Yeah. And they were just sweeping straight up that country. And I think just seeing big military operating the way they were was pretty damn cool. Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, it was like having box seats at a historical fucking, battle taking place.
It's funny you mentioned the haze. That a lot of that, the shit that's most vivid to me is the hurry up and wait bullshit getting into it.
Oh yeah.
The lead up, the prep for doing the Go Plat was just can we just get on with it?
6 weeks of fucking
rehearsals. And then it finally went off and it was like, oh, okay, that was no big deal.
Yeah.
And then it was the scavenge of the vehicles because nobody had a place for us. So we had to run around and steal shit to get vehicles. That's where that klepto shit comes in really handy.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think surprises most people, especially with,
you guys are tip of the spear. You got the best equipment.
I mean, the last 12 years of seeing MRAPs and fucking super high speed vehicles and whatever, where we had 3 Humvees. We had to fucking steal one from the Air Force and hand paint it tan because it was fucking green.
The one that was a throwaway from the first Gulfs.
Yeah.
With the fucked up turret that we had to break loose and get moving again.
Yeah. Two of which basically didn't have doors. They had just the cloth fucking doors.
I had a nice picture of you and I removing doors at one of those Circus edition stops.
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. But it is weird to think about it in that, there was no wire to be outside of because we were outside.
There was no green zone.
There was no wire to be inside of. So we were, we were fucking nomads the whole goddamn time. But
the few times that we did get the little bit of security with the Marines was like, oh shit, we can actually relax a little bit.
That didn't help.
Yeah. And there was one time, so we first went up into Nasiriyah, which, the Marines had been taking some heavies there. And that was another thing that I learned. I didn't realize that you and Glenn went and fucking pulled 29 bodies out of fucking.
Yeah, I didn't.
There was no number. Yeah, I don't think there was a number. We did pull. Yeah, it was one of those, it was on, off, on. They're like, hey, we need help to go do this. Corpsmen, go to the front lines. And, but the experience up there, Glenn and I kind of decided like, let's not share this when we get back. It's not even worth it right now. We can talk about it later.
Yeah. So that is something you guys actually talked about. Let's not fucking.
Yeah. It was kind of I remember, I think it was that moment where one of the Marines and I talk about it, where he had been hit in the head, by an RPG, but it didn't explode. It just caved in the side of his head. And, there's something about it. There's just, that's a kid, that's somebody's son, that's somebody, and you're pulling these bodies. And most people didn't know that on the front lines and on Nasiriyah was literally like almost like trench warfare of World War II.
That was shit for a while.
Yeah. And they were, and there was rumors and, of Fedayeen coming in the middle of the night. And as we experienced, zero sleep and these kids falling asleep and Fedayeen cutting their throats, and there's all that stuff. And and at this point, I don't even know if that was real or not, or if that was just part of the days we were in.
It might as well have been,
right? Yeah, I mean,
in terms
it was
of the impact.
But yeah, pulling the bodies and it was definitely a moment, I think, at the time where we were both kind of taking a big swallow, like, ugh, this fucking sucks,
Well, that and it's real.
And it was real, and to come back to you guys just didn't make sense to even bring it up. What I mean? It was just, you could tell that, no one was going to talk about any of that kind of stuff, not during.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, do you remember there was people dying, right? I mean, you don't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
You hear everything going on around us, but you have no idea that there's actually people dying hundreds of yards away from you. And you're just part of this lineup waiting to go to the next level. And it's almost, that's the weird part about it, is it's not until now you really think about it and you go, oh yeah.
Yeah, you don't realize
at the time you don't.
situation
Yeah, you
you're
think,
in.
oh, we're just kicking ass. You see cobras and you hear tanks and all
Look
that
at us
artillery.
making shit happen.
Right, we're kicking their ass, but no, yeah, even in kicking people's asses, you're still going to take losses.
Yeah.
So.
One of the things, while in the southern part of the country, outside of An Nazaria, there was a town called Sukashuk. We called Suck Ass. But one of the things that I've talked about in a couple interviews that again, it's one of those things you don't hear a whole lot about because they never found WMD, but we did this train station hit, which to this day remains the worst headache I've ever fucking had in my life. Driving, it was a 4.5 hour insert on night vision. And I was one of the drivers. Now Shane was in the lead, so he didn't realize that his fucking dust cloud
deal. Yeah, it
was fucking the rest
all
of
you
us
were
over.
doing was, we were following dust.
Yeah, you guys got fucked.
Yeah, on a fucking monocular, no less.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm sitting there with fucking one eye open, trying to drive for 4.5 hours. Like I'm
and
not
half
shitting you.
asleep.
Yeah, and it was
That's what I
middle of the
remember.
night, fucking totally blacked out. But anyway, when we hit that fucking train station, there was a bunch of WMD response equipment. You know, there was fucking 2-PAM chloride and all these fucking gas mask kits and all these different types of chemicals to respond to stuff and whatever, and shit like that never got out.
Yeah.
You know, which I thought was kind of fucked up, you know, but at any rate, we had a very unique experience looking back on it in that we, you know, essentially moved with the front line since, you know, the original plan was to have the Army come down from Turkey, the Marines come down from Kuwait and meet at Baghdad in the middle. Last second, you talk about it in the book, and I remember it plain as day, you know, that Turkey pulls out and says, no, you're not fucking going. So they had to swing around so that the Army was basically missing out on the initial invasion. So it was just the Marines and us sweeping south to north. But, you know, we were, you know, kind of hopscotching around with the front lines as it went, you know, and I remember, I don't know if you guys recall, as we got up further north, you know, we hit that Scud base, which was kind of neat, you know, in all the murals fucking that we saw, these anti-American fucking murals, and just seeing all these Scud missiles and training facilities, thinking back to the first Gulf War of how big of a deal and how big of a threat Scuds were, and now we're on like their main Scud training base, taking the whole fucking thing over. But then once we moved north up into Tikrit, was that, you know, there was a couple different routes that we went and scouted out. Some we said, fuck no, we're not doing that. But the ones that we did go on, I remember one in particular where there was this really fucking narrow bridge that they wanted us to check out, that we went and checked out. And, you know, when we went there, it was like, yeah, everything's fucking cool, whatever. We come back and then fall in line with the 1st Marine Division, and we're just convoying our way up. And well, when we made it back to where they initially encountered resistance, like you couldn't even recognize the fucking place.
Right.
There's like ankle deep brass and spots and you know, like buildings that are not there anymore that 2 hours before that were fucking perfect, and, you know, buses that are burned out and blown to fuck.
Well, the SEALs said it was okay.
Yeah. You know, but just going through all of that as it's fucking unfolding was, you know, it was a very unique experience that nobody else got, you know.
Well, an exposure with no armor.
Yeah.
Like everywhere we
Driving
went, it
around
was just
nothing.
basically naked. You know, we took all the doors off everything because that actually made it, we could unass the vehicles with some efficiency.
You could actually get out.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
hanging.
if it gets shot up, we're fucked anyway, so we should be able to get out in a hurry.
Or we're hanging spare body armor on the fucking doors to try to provide you with some type of fucking cover. But one of the things that I want to go back to, I guess, is we had a fucking guy quit. Is that something that you guys have thought much about? And it's something that I think surprises a lot of people.
You're
But
talking about the Go Plat?
yeah,
Yeah.
is it you know, basically he quit on the Go Plat, but then when
he
we were
quit a whole bunch of times in training.
Yeah.
He was always the quitter.
But, you know,
yes.
getting like after the Go Plat, which was, you know, off the coast, and then as the war kicks off, you know, we move up into Kuwait, into northern Kuwait, and get ready to cross the border. And just as we're loading up, he basically says, "I can't fucking do it."
I'm not doing it. Yeah.
You know, which I think surprises a lot of people. Have either one of you guys fucking had any contact with him?
Nope.
No,
Nothing.
no,
Not since
you know,
he left country.
for me, you know, I saw, if you guys remember, there was a lot of statements he was making leading up to that day.
Yeah.
He was so overly concerned about, are we really going to do, I mean, this is crazy. This is a
Yeah.
suicide mission, suicide.
You know,
he kept
they're
saying it.
broadcasting that shit on TV. We can't go in.
They
there
know we're
telling-
coming. They
Yeah.
know we're coming, you know,
Yeah.
and And I finally pulled him aside one day and said, are you all right? You having issues? You keep bringing this up. And the big thing was like, how is like morale wise, and me being in a leadership position was like, at least put him in check at least once or twice, because what he's saying around everyone else, it's not helping, right? It's like, fuck, we're going to go do this regardless whether you like it or not. And everybody already knows that. They don't need to hear this kid fucking mouthing off about it's a suicide mission. We're all going to die.
Yeah, whining about how bad it could be.
And I knew the reason I knew he was done is because as soon as I questioned him on it, he just did the old reflection thing, right? He just turned it around on me and said, I think you're the one that's scared. I was like, what? Where the hell are you getting that from? Like, if anybody who knew any of us core guys in that platoon, are not scared. We're actually embracing this shit. We kind of hope.
Finally.
I hope this thing blows up with all of us on board. It'd be kind of a fun way to die, by the way.
Shit.
But he definitely, I questioned that once or twice, and within 24 hours of that conversation is when he went to the LT, and then the LT came and told me, and then I think I let you guys know he was done. And then afterwards he kept repeating, I got a family, I got to go to college. Family, I want to go to college. Family, I want to go to college. And
you're the only one with a family, by the way.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, okay, well, see you later. And I remember all of us. Basically, it was good that everyone just gave him the cold shoulder from that day on. Like, he was stuck having to watch us leave.
Yeah, don't go away, mad. Just go away.
Yeah, and then he was left there. But I did hear that, years later, when he wasn't a SEAL anymore after that moment. He had his bird pulled. They made him stay and kind of watch and listen to everything that was going on. Then he eventually came back. I don't remember seeing him again, but heard he gained went into a state of depression and gained 200-300 pounds and regretted it, right? Regretted it for the rest of his life.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Fuck him.
Yeah. And he was a nice, funny guy, dude. That guy was funny.
He was funny as fuck, but
like the planned, people have to hear this. I mean, this is a guy that when we go on training trips, he would pack in his suitcase costumes playing a certain role that he knew that he was going to play. And once he went into character with these costumes, he would not come out. Do you remember when we all were going to go see some new Star Wars movie that came out?
Yeah.
And he went as the retarded little stepson. He pulled his pants up to his nipples. He had suspenders on. He had this whole kit. When he came out of the bathroom and it was time to go to the movies, we all look at him like, what the fuck? And he's like, and he had a pet. He had this monkey puppet on his hand with a leash. And he was like, my pet monkey. I got my pet monkey. And we're all like, okay, that's funny. We're leaving. Go put that shit away. No, I got my pet monkey. My pet monkey goes to the movie with me. And so then we go to the movies and we're standing in line for a Star Wars movie. And he's the whole time, my pet monkey, my pet. We haven't even gotten into the movies yet. And he's already getting us kicked out, right? So then we finally get into the theater and it's complete silence right before the big Star Wars theme comes. And he's, my pet monkey, my pet, going off about his pet monkey and acting like this, mentally handicapped kid, and putting it to the extreme to the point where, before you know it, flashlights come down the aisles and tell us to leave. So within 5 minutes of the movie started, and we're told to leave, and he still didn't come out of character. He does not. That kid would never come out of character, which I thought was pretty damn funny.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was a fucking strange bird and hilarious. What's interesting is the dichotomy between, or I guess the duality in the family of his younger brother having an absolutely impeccable fucking reputation as an absolute fucking badass. Which is weird.
I've heard, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't work directly with him overseas, but I was an instructor with him, and worked with guys, that were overseas with him that said, he was an absolute fucking warrior overseas. It's so weird that there's such a disparity.
He probably came in knowing. Your big brother, right?
Yeah, it's his older brother.
Yeah, so if your brother leaves that behind for his last name, he had to probably
had some shit to prove.
Go over the top to clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, no, he did. Fucking great guy though. But all right, another thing that took place while we were in Nazaria that you kind of forget about until I read it in the book. I was like, shit, I forgot that happened there. But was the Jessica Lynch rescue, which made quite a headline. come to find out, my best friend growing up that was, he was at the 3rd Ranger Battalion or 2nd Ranger Battalion at the time, was literally like a fucking mile away from me at that time. And we had no idea until years later. But, did you get involved? Did you and Glenn have anything to do with that? Wasn't there something that you guys saw or did or something being corpsman that,
No, there was talk of us helping out as far as being the backup to the backup on the medic side because, how the squadrons work and what they had at their disposal at the time. And they had just flown in and they were limited resources to do the rescue. But no, ultimately it was just, I remember me and I don't know if it was you guys or me and like 3 or 4 of the guys sat on a berm and watched the whole thing go down, which was kind of funny,
Yeah, no, I remember watching.
Yeah, front row seats. Isn't that what you just said?
Yeah, no, I remember sitting there watching little birds just fucking cruising back and forth. Like, wait a minute, those we know who those are. Like those aren't typical of what you see. Which is pretty wild. But
you fast forward years later into the career, my shooting partner, on the East Coast ended up being the main gunner in the turret who leveled the bottom of that hospital before the squadron went in. So later to be me and him working side by side, I was like, yeah, I was watching you do that, and you were the guy doing it. That's cool.
That's fucking great. And so after that we move up, go to northern Baghdad, and then ultimately end up in Tikrit, Saddam's hometown, and take down his hometown palace, which was pretty fucking cool. But you do a great job in the book of kind of detailing that story, so I won't get too heavy into it. But one thing that that was, I guess, interesting, and especially looking back on it, knowing the impact that it would have had, is that we spent a couple weeks up there and we did a few things, but when we were getting ready to leave, what I thought was fucking awesome was how candid, especially the 2 of you were, in terms of being very blunt and critical of leadership as we got back to Kuwait, and we're getting ready to go home, and it was kind of an open floor bitch session that our CO had, and
that has since left. They don't want to hear that shit anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, like, seeing the 2 of you fucking just tee off on the leadership was pretty fucking awesome. Now yours was pretty succinct. It was pretty short and sweet.
Yeah, I tried to be just to the point. That the biggest takeaway was that here we are at the pinnacle of every SEAL's career in this room. The pinnacle is war, which is unlike any career path on the planet, right? Our big climax, our payoff is actually how do we getting to use our skills in real world combat. And these guys had, as we all felt at the end, was that it was kind of hamstrung, and they kind of
by our own, not by outside,
right?
But by our own.
They basically fucked us over by a bunch of leaders that they know how to talk. As we all know, our officers have always been good at selling, whether it's selling us, the enlisted guys, or selling up the chain of command that we can do an operation. It all works to all of our benefit. But in that point in time, man, they had sold off on us getting to go and really wreak havoc, and then
on safety.
Yeah, and then to regulate us once we got up there was just was criminal.
Yeah,
but yeah.
And so as we all get back, then that's when our career paths really, kind of went different ways. Yours is pretty long, and
diverged is the word you're looking for.
Thanks for the tip, Chief.
You're welcome, buddy.
Yeah,
happy to help.
Yeah, no,
I don't know how you've done this as long as you have without
Frank.
me.
I don't know what I would have done without you just now.
I know.
Cut that guy's fucking mic. As we kind of go our separate ways, I would like to dive into Shane's because he's got a unique path in terms of when you got out and why, and we'll cover that. But and then follow on with Clint, since your career was so much longer. That, and I know he's about to fall asleep over here.
I'm not. No, I'm good.
So when we get back, you transfer over to Air Ops, basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Fill us in on a little bit of that, and then ultimately the biggest thing is why you got out when you got out, which I think is kind of the big takeaway.
Well, it leads back to that free-for-all leadership problem.
Yeah.
And I, as a junior guy, or shit, even as enlisted, anywhere up to chief, you're really not going to do anything against the system. The system's too big, and it's part of the problem is the system's too big, and it's polluted by its own stupidity and its own arrogance.
Yeah.
And not getting promoted to 6 years in a row.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what the answer to that question is. I suspect it has a little bit to do with both my break in service and my mouth.
Your mouth.
Probably the latter.
Yeah, well,
I don't think the break in service really held you back all that much. But
I know what I do. I know what I say, and I mean it. Yeah. And it's one of my most endearing qualities.
I got that right. Well, but I guess the thing that I'm curious, looking back on it now is that, during that time, just for the listener to understand where he was at, was air ops is parachuting, basically, like anything to do with air operations.
Right.
He was in the training department of, bringing SEALs to, from a qualification certification standard, getting them trained up where they could do fast roping, rappelling, parachuting, all things air related. Right. And so it's a shore duty billet?
It was a shore duty billet. Yeah, it was my first.
Which means you don't deploy. So right. It's kind of normal working hours for the most part. Mm-hmm. Teaching an instructor position type of thing. But even there, did you experience kind of the same level of butt fuckery?
Yes. Well, and because I was teaching the guys that were deploying, I was hearing about it on a repeated basis.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood said it best in one of his movies, A Man's Got to Know His Limitations. And I think a lot of guys don't recognize that in and of themselves. And I knew that I was at a point health-wise and functional-wise where I shouldn't be doing any more deployments because I was becoming a liability. Just after my Ironman, as you well know, I busted both of my arms pretty severely, and that took 2 years of surgeries and rehabs. And doing another one just didn't make sense to me. So my intent was to finally do a shore duty rotation and just ride that and retire.
Yeah.
That was my intent. And it just didn't work out in that capacity.
Is it a combination of continued failed leadership with being passed over for promotion?
It was the failed promotion. It was the consistent, what I viewed as piss poor performance from the top down.
Yeah.
And I was never going to get promoted so that I could make a change. And some of that seemed intentional.
Yeah.
Because if they can't wrangle you as an E6, you put on khakis and they're damn sure not going to wrangle you. And a lot of guys fall into that, sadly, get promoted and start sucking company dick, as opposed to actually thinking for themselves and seeing a problem and fixing it from the bottom up as should be intended. Clint touches on it a number of times, and it's that failed structure within from policing our own.
Yeah.
And we're castrating ourselves from ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly it seems as though the officers are the leadership in the community, and that was never supposed to be the case, particularly in our world.
Yeah.
It should be a Chiefs club, and those guys should be running the show from a base of experience, and they're not.
Yeah.
And they're not because militarily guys have started looking at what we do as a career instead of a job.
Yeah.
And it's that defining point that I think is the catalyst. I think it's the same problem in politics. It shouldn't be a career. It should be a job. We got this job to do, and then I'm going to move on and do other things, as opposed to what can I do to further my career? And that's checking boxes, and it's never done for the right reasons.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, your departure letter, we'll call it.
Yeah.
It is still fairly well known, I think.
I still run into guys now that are like, "You're the guy that," I'm like, "Oh, no, look at that shit."
If you could just talk about that letter.
Jerry Maguire moment.
It was a complete dumb accident. There was a senior chief.
It's not the first time.
I think it was a senior chief admin type tech at Team 7 that produced an email that was supposed to go to E8 and above within the community, that global network.
Yeah.
And it was about a special duty pay that they were proposing to Congress. At that level, that's how that shit works. And it was for 24-year plus E8 and above, so E8s and warrants, to get an extra $1,000 a month of special duty pay.
Just because.
To stay in the military, to not get out until 30.
Yeah.
And I happened to be in Bahrain at the time. It was my last overseas duty. It was, 5:00 in the evening in Bahrain, which I never was good at that math, but it was nighttime in the States. And I saw that and I typed up a response that was maybe a bit crass, but I meant it. And and it was to the tune of, now that's a fucking great idea. Let's continue to pay the guys that have no combat experience. And I don't say that disrespectfully. They were just in a time when we weren't in combat.
Yeah.
It's nobody's fault. It's timing. But that doesn't change the fact that they had the least amount of experience. And those were the guys, if you're over 20 years in the military and you haven't gotten out, you're not fucking getting out, whether they give you more money or not.
Yeah.
Because you've proven you want to stay. When you got E4s and E5s trying to have families and you got guys that are on fucking food stamps and trying to make ends meet that aren't getting consideration for that extra pay. And it pissed me off.
Yeah.
And so the tone of my email was that. That's a great idea. Let's give it to the guys that are already making more money than they deserve and not give it to the guys that deserve it.
Remind me who you sent that to.
I sent that to everybody in Naval Special Warfare.
Oh, that's right.
Global
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure I checked all the boxes the first time I did it.
Yeah. A little double tap.
And I went on home.
Yeah.
And I never gave it another thought because it didn't occur to me. Like, to me, it was just, I was saying my piece to an email that I got on the global system that I shouldn't have gotten.
Yeah.
So the mistake was I shouldn't have gotten it to begin with. The fact that I did it gave me an opportunity to respond, and I did.
Yeah. And so after that, you ran into a few fucking snags, which ultimately you ended up getting out, right?
Well, that was leading. I was headed that direction anyway. My the detailer at the time wanted me to go back to a platoon, and I illustrated what I just said.
Yeah.
That just leave me. I've never done shore duty. I know I'm here long, but I won't be here as long as. And I knew him from buds. We'd known each other a long time. And at that point, I had done equal deployments with a 4-year break in service.
Yeah.
As he had, having been in the entire time, never getting out. And I called him on it, and it pissed him off. So I went to Bahrain on those orders, and I figured by the time I got back, that's considered a hard fill. So I figured I'd come back and be able to get orders, because after a hard fill, you're supposed to get orders wherever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back, he was still the detailer. He had extended.
Yeah.
So I wasn't getting shit. So I was like, fine, fuck it, I'll get out. And his statement to me then was, nobody gets out at 16 plus. Well, because most guys are married with kids and they've got financial responsibility, they simply can't.
Yeah. I'm
like, well, I don't own a house. I've never been married. I don't have any responsibility. I can get the fuck out. And so I did.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to change that speech. And so I cut bait. It dawned on me at that point that I really could do whatever the fuck I wanted. Yeah. And so I chose to do that.
Yeah. Well, and to me, the neat thing about that you just don't get from most people is legitimately putting your fucking money where your mouth is. Like that's no bullshit. Like, I will fucking get out right now. And for anybody that's spent any amount of time in the military, you realize what getting out at 16 and change really means. And to do that on principle,
yeah.
Is part of the reason, all busting each other's balls aside, you two guys are legitimately two of the best fucking men I know, and always will be. And it's stuff like that I think contributes to that myth that I believe about you. But moving into...
Believe it all.
Yeah,
it's all true.
It's all legend.
Ditto, Mike.
Yeah.
That was well said. Ditto. I just ditto it.
Thanks, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's all talk like that for the rest of the fucking time.
That would be
That's
great.
what I've been doing.
No, I think that's
setting the
a
tone.
great
Moving
idea.
into what somebody's got to sweep this fucking shit show along.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Who's in charge of that?
Yeah, well, it's me, and I'm failing.
Yeah.
But the neat thing is, you've always been a nomad. You move into what you do now, which kind of started out as just fucking tinkering around. And I remember seeing some of your first knife creations. You were just like, I mean,
creation.
What do you mean seeing? You have my second knife that I ever made.
Right. That's first loser, number one. And,
Correct.
And two is that it made me feel like that proud parent of his retarded son that's like painting this just fucking abortion.
You can't say retard.
I did.
That's not.
I did.
It's the 1980s version.
We'll need another. I meant in the not.
No,
being
I
able
know
to light
exactly
it on
what
fire
you meant.
sense.
Yeah.
But it was like, well, it works well,
Mm-hmm. No, it looked like a retarded kid made it in third grade noodle art. No question about it.
Yeah.
What number is mine? My retirement one. Had you already made a whole bunch?
No, you're
one of the
you're
early
early
ones
too.
too,
Your
but-
retirement piece was a completely one-off, and
yeah.
it was fuck, I think maybe 6 months in, 7 months in.
All right,
Yeah, you were really early
I
too.
feel special.
But the neat thing is, and we've
Fuck,
got
I forgot all about that retirement.
yeah,
piece.
we're still talking.
Yeah.
The neat thing
No,
is
I know.
yeah,
I'm still here.
I still hear you. The neat thing is seeing how far you've come, and you know, in a very small way, being able to be at least not necessarily a part of it, but being able to observe fairly closely your progression in knife making and seeing how good you've gotten at it. And it's something that you know, all bullshit and joking aside, like I'm really fucking proud of who you've become, you know, in terms of knife and tool making and the different ideas that you come up with, and how not just, you know, how nice they look now, where it, like, I feel like you're at a point now where the aesthetics of the knives mirror the functionality of them, you know, and for a number of years they kind of didn't. They still looked pretty unfinished and unpolished, but worked amazingly fucking well in a world where so many knives are more works of art, which is nothing wrong with that.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of really good knife makers out there that make some truly, you know, they're pieces of art, and they're phenomenal at what they do. But in some instances tend to lack some of the usability that you want in a knife that you're really going to use day in, day out to do shit with. Yours have always, from my perspective, really kind of set the standard on a knife that is the fucking M1A1 tank of fucking cutting tools. If you could just kind of talk about, in 30 words or less,
that ain't happening, and you fucking know it.
Just, you know, what you do.
So as long as we're putting all joking aside, watching what you two have done, like actually as an approach to career building, has been a ton of my motivation, because initially it was just a hobby for me. Yeah. I had no goal with it, and I've been that way most of my life. I've never been real goal oriented.
Sets low fucking goals,
sets low standards and
consistently
fails to achieve them. Correct. And it wasn't. I like making shit. I like building shit with my hands. I always have, and the knife thing. I've always had a knife since I was about 6 years old. I've carried a knife.
I cut my way out of the womb with a knife.
When I was 10, I was making machetes out of mild steel to run down on the river bottom and hack shit up because it fascinated me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had a stepdad that had a really nice collection of tools that I could use to do shit like that. I mowed lawns for a guy that helped stand up the American Blacksmith Society, which I didn't know that until just recently.
Yeah.
He made me a little belt knife from a piece of stainless steel cable when I was 15. That I still have.
Oh shit.
I've actually talked to him about, you know, what he's done and how he got started. Yeah. And my start is similar. I made a blade because it seemed like something fun to do. Yeah. And then I showed it to you and you're like, hey, make me one of those.
Yeah.
And then you started showing it to people because of your connections. I started getting hey, I'll give you a case of ammo for one of those. Hey, how much for one of those? And I thought, fuck, I can make money doing this?
Yeah.
Who'd have thought? And so it started from that. The direction that I took is I've always abused a knife. It's not anybody watching that's a knife aficionado. I know they have a purpose. The simple fact is, if you've used a knife at a job, you know that they need to be abused. They need to be able to stand up to abuse. It's not their design purpose, but if they won't, they're more dangerous than not.
Yeah.
And so that's where my design parameters come from. I want functionality before fit and finish.
Mm-hmm.
And the fit and finish is chasing functionality, not because I'm chasing it necessarily, but because of practice.
Yeah.
The more of them I do and the more exposure I get to the industry, the more I see where fit and finish makes something a little bit better. And it makes people more willing to spend the money that I'm asking.
Yeah.
There's a ton of questions about why does it cost that much? Well, the $80,000 shop and equipment that I have to make these knives is part and parcel to that reason.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and it's why most manufacturing exists overseas now.
Yeah.
Because it's not cheap to do this shit in the States.
Well, that and you know, so many of your pieces are custom designs or builds, or you work with people, and that's one of the neat things that I really like as we get into showcasing some of these that you've made for me. That, you know, or it's like, hey, I want this, but with that and this handle and this cut, you know, and it's like a Mr. Potato Head almost of knife making, but in all of the fucking coolest ways possible. And to me, you know, seeing even something as simple as one of the things that you bring to the table is, you know, I have firewood that's from my ranch property,
right?
You know, that is harvested from that property. It's red oak, and Shane took a chunk of that with him back to his shop and made a knife with that as the handle.
Right.
And you'd never know that it was a fucking piece of firewood from my property. Like it looks like a finnet, just like these do on the table. And, to me, for anybody listening out there, if you have the front door or a barn door from something that, you grew up with, or, there's any structure that has wood that can be incorporated into that, is a really neat way to kind of memorialize, different childhood memories. But then you take it a step further, talk a little bit about incorporating and then showcase some of the pieces, incorporating, articles of clothing, material, camis, etc., and then ultimately ashes, which is to me the coolest fucking thing that you've done.
So the ashes thing came about again because Glenn died, and as you know, I'm pretty tight with his estate handler, the owner of Bubs.
Yeah.
We had talked about playing around with the idea. It occurred to me that it would be a cool way to put it. Everybody uses a kitchen knife.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my tactical stuff isn't applicable across the board. So the kitchen knife stuff, I'm moving in that direction. I have a full kitchen set now because of that evolution. But being able to put ashes in acrylic in order to memorialize somebody that's died, and we know a ton of guys like that now.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a niche market.
Yeah.
The guys that think it's cool think it's over the top cool, and the guys that don't will never get it.
Yeah.
And I'm on board with that. I'm okay with that idea, but the dabbling to get to that point, my mom passed in 16, and I started playing with her ashes and acrylic, and I've wasted.
Sounds funny.
I'm just
playing with mom's ashes.
I've wasted a number of tablespoons of mom's ashes trying to get to this point. My brother busts my balls. He's like, why don't you do that with something that's not mom's ashes? I'm like, well, because if it works, I don't want to waste a good pour.
Yeah.
And so playing with mom's ashes and getting to the point where I've had an ability to do it. I did one for Clint request. I've done a couple. You have a cleaver with Glenn's ashes in it, and part of his uniform. The problem with the way I did your cleaver is the uniform usage wasn't. There was not enough economy in it. I have one top, one of his desert cami tops that I got from Sean, and I got the ashes from Sean as well. When I decided I want to start pursuing this, he pitched me some ashes and helped me out.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
From an economy standpoint, it didn't make sense. So I've since moved to acrylic pour with his uniform mixed into the acrylic, so you can see it suspended, and then putting his ashes into it. And so I did that. This one's an actual.
This is the big reveal.
This is for you.
Oh.
And
I have not seen this yet.
That's got so the design.
Oh, look at that!
Is off of your Japanese kitchen blade. The blade profile.
Dude,
the spine and handle is mine. You asked for light wood, but you also said in that same sentence that your favorite handle I've done for you is the desert ironwood.
Yeah.
So there's Glenn's ashes and uniform in acrylic with clear acrylic pins and desert ironwood in his.
Oh yeah, that looks good.
I mean, it's all bullshit aside. It's not often that I almost don't really even know what the fuck to say, and almost feel a little shaky in my voice fucking talking about it. If you can zoom in on that, this knife it's fucking stunning. This ironwood, he's got dog print paw pins. You can see Glenn's ashes in here. There's even chunks of fucking bone.
Yeah.
And then suspended pieces of his desert cami uniform suspended in that handle. He's got his logo, Glen, there, and then Bub on the backside. The weight of the knife, I mean, fuck, this thing feels like it weighs about 2 pounds. Very thick spine, super fucking sharp. And it's an absolute beautiful fucking piece that I asked him to make several months ago. It was on the camping trip. I had a knife very similarly shaped that I said was kind of my go-to knife in the kitchen. I do a lot of cooking, and this is going to replace that. So, for me to be able to have, one of my best friends make a knife that I can use day in, day out that has, such a sentimental value and meaning to it. Glenn was also big into cooking, and to be able to kind of incorporate all this into a work of art that's very usable and has that kind of value, to me, I'm fucking blown away by it, man. This is absolutely fucking amazing. You gotta check that out, man.
I appreciate the inspiration.
Yeah.
The blade shape would have never occurred to me.
Yeah.
I'd been playing around with something similar with a completely different grind.
Yeah.
So when you brought that kitchen knife and we compared, the edge profile was nearly identical already. I just had to play around with it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that is just fucking stunning.
In your honor, as a co-designer, I'm calling it the tri-prep knife.
All right.
So tri-coast and a prep knife. So yeah, that's the tri-prep.
Oh fuck, I love it, man. That's awesome.
And that's it's a medium version. It's a medium piece in the set.
Yeah. I mean, to finally see it, I know you've been working on it and you finished it a little while ago, but it's just, I mean, that's something that I'll be proud to fucking use every fucking day in the kitchen. So,
and it'll hold up to it.
Yeah.
The steel is S35 VN. For all you knife nuts and steel nuts out there, it's a good quality small microstructure stainless, and it's about as indestructible as you can make for a kitchen knife.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's something I'll use for the rest of my life. And
your kids and theirs after that, if it's just taken care of a little bit.
I'm not letting them put their grubby fucking dick skinners
not
on
until
this
you're dead and they have to take it out of your pile of shit.
I'd rather be buried with it than them fuck it up. No, kidding. I love you guys.
Yeah.
Sort of. Anyway, I can't thank you enough. It's a fucking amazing piece. To see it in person finally is just awesome. If you could talk about, we'll actually post pictures of the other products, but just kind of tell, like, in that, if somebody was to, ask, hey, what's your 30-second elevator pitch? What do you do?
Why do you keep asking me to be
because you
brief?
are one of the most long-winded motherfuckers. Like, back in 1976.
So no shit, there I was.
So my neighbor, what synopsize the company.
My evolution of the kitchen series is a Santoku kitchen. I like the spine profile of the Santoku. It's a Japanese spine profile. The edge geometry is kind of a blend between the Santoku and a French chef's knife.
So you make a whole kitchen series then,
I
right?
do now, yes. Okay. Yours and the paring knife completed it.
Okay, so it's the Santoku.
Yeah, so this was the first piece. I did the carving set as a second piece. And it's just a fork and knife combo with a 10-inch carving knife.
Yeah.
This to me is the workhorse of a kitchen. Everybody uses a knife around this size. Mine has a heavier spine than anything you'll find on the market. It's a 7.5-inch blade as a standard. I'll modify anything. That's kind of what I like to do, is modify.
Yeah.
That's why I had so much fun fucking with you guys, because you're like, hey, can you do this and take this and make? Yeah, that's what I'm about. I like producing stuff that's repeatable, but repeatable is boring.
Yeah.
So ideally, I'd love that opportunity to say, hey, I want this, and this is what it means to me. That really makes me want to be in the shop.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's the custom pieces that you do for people's retirements, or when somebody passes, or getting married or whatever. Your ability to work with people and make exactly what the fuck they want is something pretty fucking unique that most people don't have the ability or opportunity to enlist somebody's expertise on.
Right.
So, you can make basically anything, but if you could run down the different categories of ones that you kind of make regularly that you have available mostly all the time.
So I have an EDC series, Everyday Carry series, that they range from about a 2.5-inch blade length up to just under 4-inch. 4 inches, the magic number nationally for legality purposes for fixed blade.
Yeah.
Most states have a 4-inch limit on fixed blade carry. Some states, California being one of the most obscene about it, has all manner of stupid ass rules about that for double edge, that kind of thing. But the Everyday Carry series is kind of my mainstay for tactical or useful or outdoorsy stuff. And all of those are modifiable, but I have a series, there's 7-8 blades in that series.
Okay.
That are all available as often as I make them on the site.
Yeah.
And the kitchen series is new. This is a brand new, and this is a one-off. This has my current maker's mark, which is going to change as of January 1 to what you have on your blade.
Yeah. That's a fucking sweet logo.
So this set with the 7 pieces has the original mark on it. It's the only set I'll ever make with a matching black and white ebony handles.
Yeah.
The entire set is S35 VN in all the cutting pieces. The fork is dropped from my hatchet makes, and that's 4140 chromoly.
I don't know what the fuck that means.
I know, but the people that know it will get it.
Yeah.
The paring knife, my mom cooked, as we talked about growing up. The paring knife was her go-to for everything in the kitchen. She used it for everything. She worked in a butcher shop when she was pregnant with me, which is interesting. She ate raw meat right off the line.
Not good for her.
Gross.
Cravings, right? The paring knife is forged. I had never forged S35.
Is that where the pitting comes from?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that forge that are way better at it than probably I'll ever be.
Yeah.
As I'm very new at it. I like the process. Heating a piece of steel up and beating it into submission is strangely rewarding.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to beat a piece of steel,
Like your penis.
Yep, I am not going to polish out all the marks made from my work.
Yeah.
So I leave the hammer marks in the spine and even on the main edge if available.
Yeah.
From the grind. This started as a piece about that size.
Oh, no shit.
And I just stretched it out and thinned it so that it would work as a paring knife.
You're good at stretching things out, making them look longer than they
making
actually
them
are.
thinner.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you're basically a penis pump for a knife.
I am.
All right.
Yeah.
This is a really fucking cool thing. This butcher knife or cutting knife set that comes
carving
in wood.
set, the classic Thanksgiving, Christmas time shit.
But did you come up with this block set?
Yeah, I had to because, as I mentioned, all of my spine thicknesses, they're thicker than anything you'll find on the market. So there's not a knife block, a butcher block.
Yeah.
Even if the dimension. The breadth of my blades is pretty broad, and it won't fit in most blocks, but the thickness of the spine won't fit in a block. So I had to come up with something to store that set in.
That's a cool fucking setup, man.
The Kydex closed for all of them. The cleavers, a design from another buddy, a guy I went to college with. He asked me if I'd pursue the cleaver idea, and I did. The design I really like. It's as heavy as any cleaver on the market. Probably heavier than most. That weighs in at about 2 pounds and 3 ounces.
That's a heavy fucker. It's like a goddamn broadsword.
The problem with it is because of this race car profile that overlaps the handle, I have to finish it all the way to sharp and shippable before I can put a handle on it.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. So I have to put the Kydex on it to protect myself.
Yeah.
And
it's a big fucking hunk of steel.
Yeah, it's a 9-inch cutting edge. And I mean, it'll cut a tree down and still field dress it. I mean, it'll do anything you ever wanted to put in front of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I like most about your knives is how thick the spines are, which translates to, ultimately durability and being able to sharpen it over and over and over. And they're incredibly well made. Again, that carving set is fucking cool.
I'm getting that same feedback.
There's some clicking. Can you check on it? Yeah. It's fucking speaking Swahili.
No, I got to say, though, I've got several of, last year you made me a classic. I wanted a classic, old
the
Bowie.
fighter.
Yeah, the Bowie knife.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's more like your Rambo style. And then you made an EDC belt knife for me.
Tail first.
Jesus Christ. It's like playing cards with my brother.
Just pay attention when you take it apart and put it back together the same way. It's really fucking simple.
I was trying to pay attention to you.
But like Mike was saying, is that you definitely have gone from Conan the Barbarian to now you're a little more James Bond.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I said, it's not,
good,
it wasn't the pursuit. I wasn't chasing pretty. Pretty has evolved.
No, I agree.
Repetition.
No, you were not chasing pretty.
No question about it.
Looked like some fucking prison shivs early on.
It was.
It was like, what is that fucking barbed wire?
Well, tell people he was grabbing what was it, the springs off of Humvees,
right? Leaf spring.
The leaf spring, and then turning that into, which is what I thought was cool in itself, is you're taking leaf springs off of a Humvee and then you're turning it into a knife. I mean, what better kind of knife to have than something that comes off of a war wagon? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the idea is not new by any stretch. The springs.
It's new. You made it up.
I wish I had.
He patented it.
You know how to market yourself.
Let's make that the rule. I made all this shit up, and I'm sure nobody will call me on it.
First ever.
Typical spring steel in leaf and coil springs on vehicles is 5160, which is a spring alloy. It takes a really good, thorough heat treat, and it performs well as a blade. Guys have been doing it probably as long as vehicles have existed. And
yeah, that's cool though.
When I decided to start forging, my brother's a diesel mechanic, and he has access to, every time they break springs at work, they throw them away. They throw them into a metal recycling pile. So I just have him bring them home.
Yeah.
So I have, I don't know, 500 or 600 pounds of knives just waiting to be made.
That's cool.
And because the steel performs so well, it's an easy thing to run, and I have access to it, so my upfront costs are a little bit lower. I have forged the paring knife. I've got a number of pieces that are in that 5160, and I forged my first kitchen knife just this spring, and it's the first one I've ever done. I have it, and it's for a fundraiser.
Yeah.
Do you want to show it now? You want to do it now? You want to do it later?
We can wrap it up with it. Well, actually, you might as well. We'll bust it out now. And while he's getting it ready, one thing we'll ask and just kind of add is that, if you want to check these knives out, if you want to have a custom piece made with somebody's ashes or material from, a wedding dress or, clothing or, materials from around your house or whatever that can be incorporated into the handle, where can people find you to enlist that service? And also, where do you kind of see yourself going in the future?
So I've taken a whole new tact on forward planning, which I've never done before. Some of it had to do with maybe 2 or 3 days of pretty heavy badgering from a couple of guys I know.
I don't know who would have done
about getting my shit together and actually doing something useful.
Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar.
Just organizing your shit. Yeah.
It's
good.
I am moving into, so my website is now sh9.com. It was sh9 Edgeworks for years. Apparently URLs are real estate, which I never knew. I've learned this recently and hired a broker and managed to get myself sh9. So it's just 3 digits, super easy to find. And from that, I'm going to have some offshoot for outdoor equipment. I've been playing with a rocket stove design and a number of other things. So ultimately, long term, I intend to evolve into more stuff. My forging work is going to get heavier this year. Ideally, I really enjoy doing it. I am playing around with, as you now know, my 13-and-a-half-year-old hound finally passed a couple of weeks ago. I had him cremated, and I have researched forging his ashes directly into the steel of a blade, which I'll be playing around with. So I'll have, this one has ashes in a vial. Yours is directly into an acrylic.
Yeah.
And moving forward, I'll be able to put ashes directly into the steel of a blade
that's fucking
with
cool.
Zero effect on usability.
Yeah.
And the only way you'll know is if you know I did it. That you won't be able to see that I did it. It'll just be
in there.
It'll be an agreement between, somebody that wants it done and me, knowing that that's what I'm going to do with their ashes.
Yeah. No, that's fucking great. So sh9.com, similar handle on Instagram, which is where you do most.
Yeah. On Instagram, it's sh9 Outdoor Shop.
Okay.
Facebook, it's sh9. Twitter's sh9.
Okay. So you know where to find them. This piece in particular has our good friend Glen's ashes, as well as the placard in the handle. Talk a little bit about this knife and ultimately how people can bid on it and purchase it and where the proceeds are going.
So this was the first run of ashes in a handle. I asked a guy that I follow on Instagram. I'm going to give him a shout out because he's got a really artistic eye. Gunstone Creations. He pours his own handles, and he was putting bullet casings, rounds, cut brass, pouring his own handles. And I met him at a show in Oregon a little over a year ago, and I asked him about his acrylic, and he was real forthcoming. He was super pleasant. Like, it's not a secret. This is what I use, and this is how I do it. And he worked me through being able to pour this handle. I put Glen's ashes in 2 vials and suspended them in the handle. If you hold the handle up edgewise, you can see behind the trident and the placard. So I did a mini trident on one side.
Oh, that's cool.
And the placard on the other side is from a Russian jet turbine. Oh, and it has all of Glen's information in it.
Yeah, that's cool. With
the ashes on both sides. That's my first forged kitchen knife. And it is not for auction. What I'm trying to do is get donations for the GDMF, Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. When I reach a certain dollar amount, my goal is $10,000 for the GDMF. I don't take a nickel of that. I want to donate the knife to his sister, who runs GDMF.
That's cool.
And I want her to have it as a family heirloom in perpetuity. Yeah. That's my intent for this blade.
How can people donate to that?
There's a link on my site on sh9.com. There's a link to donate directly. When I reach that number, I will donate the knife to Kate. And it's a simple ask. Everybody can afford $1, and I know your reach is big. Everybody just take a second right now, donate $1. I reach my goal, I give Kate the knife. Super simple. Here, I'll wait.
Okay, and we're good.
Okay, everybody good? Thanks for that. I appreciate it. If I reach that goal, great. If it's more than that, spectacular. GDMF is doing good shit for education for our guys getting out and trying to figure out what to do with their lives as adults, pseudo-adults.
Yeah.
And so that's the intent with this blade.
No, it's great shit. Like I said, to see the progression that you've gone through in knife making, tool making, and seeing what your products have turned into is something I'm just fucking super proud of you on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
This piece,
Me too, Shane.
like I said, go on sh9.com, donate so we can get this piece to Glen's sister, and she can keep that in their family for eternity. So
this has a 9-inch, and it is forged, so it's 5160, and it's a 9-inch blade.
Nice.
So this will do everything she'll ever want to do in the kitchen. I know she has kids with family. This shit can be passed on forever. It'll never go bad.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for bringing your stuff in. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for kicking ass. All right, moving on to the final phase of this book, and really where a lot of the shit you've told us stories. Here we are in
we
hour
don't even
5.
need to read the book now.
You do.
I'm verbose.
If you could, I mean, you two guys have been such a big part of my life. Like, we could have done episodes individually, but to me, getting the band back together and having a long one is what it's all about. So
having a long one is what it's all about.
The part 2 essence of the book titled Squirrel World. Talk about that a little bit and leading up to where you ended up getting out, but all the cool shit that you can share up until then.
Oh,
the non-redacted stuff.
Let me remember what was redacted. So it goes back. When I blame the government for my mom not being able to read the book is because it sat at the Pentagon for almost a year, being reviewed by 5 different agencies. So what happens in the review process is you send your manuscript to the Pentagon then makes copies and sends it to any major command you ever served at, and then all of those commands individually review your manuscript, redact whatever they want. I'm having T-shirts made that say, "When in doubt, black it out." All proceeds will go towards bombing the embassy. I mean, sorry, the Pentagon. No, I'm just kidding. I would never bomb the Pentagon. But they did hold things up, and not only did my mom miss out, but that we passed up 2 publication dates and everything else. So, halfway through my career, I switched over to more of that covert clandestine world. Rumsfeld coined a phrase that's become very popular, and that's fine, fix, finish. And of course, some smart admirals, and there's only a few of them, that decided to change NSW's ways to a certain degree and add in more capability that made us better at the find and the fix, right? So finish, to us, we know very well, which is kill or capture. And really is kind of the easiest piece of the puzzle. The find and the fix, I always compare things like, checkers versus chess, right? Find and fix is like the chess aspect, and the finish kind of rolls you into more of the checkers world, mainly because there's, you can make a whole lot more moves in the covert world, like chess, to win over your adversaries. And so I screened for a program. I had no idea what the hell it was all about. And myself and a couple other guys were, kind of chosen. And then before you know it, we're off to the races building new programs that took NSW into a new world, and NSW, Naval Special Warfare. And so I had some successes operationally. I got to go and operate against bin Laden and his fleet of vessels. And then the successes from that led to going into working against, some other known names, like the lead hostage negotiator for Somali pirates. I got to go and it was by completely mistaken stuff, but ended up playing a role in his demise. And then also later ended up getting to work against Anwar al-Awlaki, or also known as AAA, who most people know as the American citizen that was educated here in the United States and then went over to Yemen, and he started up Inspire magazine, which was responsible for radicalizing probably more Americans than any one bad guy. He had a very popular YouTube channel. He had a big beard and his little wire glasses, and he actually became #1 bad guy on the planet after we killed bin Laden. And so I had an opportunity to basically operate against all these guys, but in a much different way than what we were used to. It wasn't combat. It wasn't in theaters of war. It was outside the theaters of war. And these deeds, are typically the kind of deeds that go unknown. And I really did do a good job telling the stories in the book without touching on classified or anything like that. It's never been. I'm not into that. As you can see, I didn't even put a trident on the front of the book like most people. But it's mainly, it just doesn't matter, right? This is about. My goal was to tell stories about us and the personal adventure, but you have to paint the picture of the environment, where you are, and what you're doing in order to get to that point.
Yeah.
And that's the parts that got redacted, right? So,
so you still don't know the story, but there I was.
Yeah, there was these clowns, that decided. I'm not kidding you. The redactions in the book are very subjective, to say the least. And it was during a time when, this past year or so, where Naval Special Warfare has been in the news, it seems like, every other week because of different events. And we all know those events, and, if you're listening to this 10 years from now, it's 2019 or at the tail end. And in the year of 2019, there was a lot of SEALs in the news for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah. Well, and, one thing I wanted to do in terms of contrasting the book is that the first half, Shane and I and you have a very intimate familiarity with, and that's why I like to spend some time talking about it. The second half, is your secret squirrel world, and I want to save that for the reader, because there are, in reading through the book yesterday, there's a ton of really fucking cool stories that do draw that or balance that sensitivity of keeping the story fucking interesting, but not giving away the fucking playbook.
No.
Yeah, you did a great job at that, and it's a fascinating book. I love the way that it's written. The illustrations are unlike anything I've seen. It's an incredible read. And in the last better part of 2 years now that I've been doing this, I've read a lot of fucking books. And all things aside, even though I'm intimately familiar with half of it, even being so familiar with it, I still found myself captivated by reading it, which to me says a lot, because it's like, well, I already know this fucking story, or a lot of it.
But I
did hours of interviews with the writer to pepper some of the stuff in there, and I still found myself fucking captivated by it. So you did a really good job with it. It's a great fucking book, and I was antsy to read it, but wanted to wait until right before we did this interview, and glad that I did. It's a phenomenal read. One thing I would like you to share that, again, I didn't realize how much of an impact that it had, or how bad it was for you towards the end of how jaded you became, and how bad you really got fucked over in exiting the Navy. And that's something I think would surprise most people. Could you talk a little bit about that and the impact that it had on your mentality as you got out?
Yeah, I mean, I was at year 18, 19, and as anybody who served knows, you can put in your retirement paperwork and kind of get started on your next life as far as 24 months out. You can put in retirement papers. I did, I don't know, somewhere between 12 and 24. I can't remember. I put in my retirement paperwork. I had a plan, starting Escape the Wolf, which is, all crisis management and boring stuff for most people, but I enjoy it. And around the same time that I was kind of working on my exit strategy, a book called No Easy Day came out, and it lit the Naval Special Warfare on fire, because this is a book that had been written and then not reviewed by the Pentagon. And because it wasn't reviewed, they deemed that there was, several pieces of classified information sprinkled throughout the book. And so it led to a very, and no fault to that writer. I mean, Mark Owen, he put a book together and he went and published it. And frankly, the review process wasn't anything readily known. Nobody knew about it. And frankly, Naval Special Warfare at the time didn't give a shit about what guys were doing when they got out. Yeah, right. They didn't care. And so he wrote about the Bin Laden operation, and it came back to bite him because he didn't get reviewed. But anyway, at the time, they had the commanding officer had no control over him because he was already out. So in typical Naval Special Warfare style, he went to knee-jerk reaction and find everybody that I am in control of, and let's open up investigations on everyone. And so I happen to be target number 1 on the list, without a doubt, because I was very open with my transition. I talked about Escape the Wolf to everybody.
You could take that a few different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
With your transition. It's very open about it.
Yeah. He is. He's very receptive.
Yeah. And so anyway, they decided to open an investigation on me, and I go through and explain kind of how that went about, which was completely ass backwards. And then it led all the way to a Trident board where, that's when you sit in front of a panel of enlisted guys with an attorney in the room and leadership. And then they badger you with a bunch of pre-scripted questions that had nothing to do with anything. Most of the questions had everything to do with whether or not I was friends with Mark. And, at the time, I got to say, I was pissed at the guy. But over time, I was like, whatever. He was just doing whatever it took to survive when he got out and make money, put food on the table, whatever. And in sense, now look at me. I'm definitely have become a guy who writes books, where at the time I had no plans to. Yeah. But the day I walked out of that Trident board, after being badgered about a guy who wrote a book, that's when I decided, okay, well,
I'm gonna write a book.
I'm gonna get out and write books.
Yeah. And careful what you wish for.
Yeah, every book I've written has been a big middle finger to those specific people who decided to, run an investigation on me right before I retired, for absolutely no real solid reason other than, he was doing something so that he can transition. Yeah. And I was fortunate. Because nothing happened. I kept my bird and I retired and everything's fine because there was nothing I was doing wrong. But the other 20 guys behind me got their tridents pulled, were sweeping the quarter decks. They had to change commands. I mean, there's a lot of guys behind me that got totally screwed over.
God damn.
And these are senior guys who had done a lot for their country at that point in time. And here they were getting scrutinized and basically having their careers destroyed over something that had nothing to do with really anything current in the active duty world. This had to do with a guy who was already out.
Well, and to me, the biggest travesty of all that is that they're not doing anything that the guys fucking them over aren't doing either. Right. Just in a different way.
It's whether
it's going into politics and setting themselves up for the next fucking gig, however they're doing it, whatever that gig is. Right. That's all they're doing is they're looking out, they're planning ahead of saying, okay, this fucking government tit is going to dry up here the day I fucking cross the quarter deck. How am I going to continue to fucking stay alive and provide for me and my family and whatever? And to me, to chastise and punish guys for that is fucking criminal. I do love your use of asterisks in the book. For,
it's quality.
Half of the laughing out loud that you'll get in reading this book come from the annotations, so don't skip over them. If you see an asterisk, look at the bottom of the page.
Yeah, it's good shit.
It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, there was definitely three goals of creativity with this book that I wanted to be kind of the first at, I guess. Most memoirs is just words with a center section full of pictures of look at me, look at me, look at me, and look at what I did. And I knew I didn't want to do that. I wouldn't have put myself on the front of the cover. That was not me. That's publishers doing that crap. And if they could have put a trident, they would have. But the big piece is it's got good narrative, good storytelling. I got to give it to my ghostwriter. I got to give it to you guys and about 20 plus other people that played a part in the interviews for this book, because my memory is fucking horrible. And it was a group effort to build this thing. And then the illustrations, of course, we've already talked about that, the footnotes. So those are the three elements: good narrative, great illustrations, and then, of course, footnotes that are like my personal thought bubbles.
Yeah.
Personal fuck you. That's
awesome. Great.
Certain aspects.
Yeah, they're fucking great. I love it. I mean, yeah, it's like reading the notes of the author as he's proofreading the final edition.
Makes it fun.
Yeah. In kind of closing up the notes on the book, all three of us spent different parts of our career. Myself, the shortest. You did 20. Shane did 16 and change. I did a little over 12. But we all, did something at a high level, experienced things that a lot of people don't, and identified as what our job title was for long enough to where the absence of that tends to fuck with people upon transitioning out, losing that identity of being an active duty SEAL and kind of the respect and reverence that one obtains by becoming one and being one in a combat environment or as an instructor, whether it's air ops or buds or going on to what you did, Clint. And again, there's a couple different points in the book where the summation of kind of how I rationalize things are so succinctly and eloquently put that I'm just like, fuck, I couldn't have said that any better myself, or even that good, frankly. And one of them, even though it's real short, I think it really highlights what a lot of us go through in terms of not processing things while you're on active duty, not dealing with certain things. And the impact that has on upon exiting the military. And I want to read page 258 and 59, just a quick excerpt of kind of what you went through and how it. What are you fucking with while I'm trying to be serious?
OCD
here?
Over here. He's fucking with that shit and lining it up, and it's.
You're just as bad.
Exactly.
I'm trying to fucking read here.
Serious moment.
Sorry.
But so as Clint gets out, he says this. In that first year, I lost around 20 pounds and spent a lot of time mentally replaying the way the Admiral had fucked with me when I wasn't binging action movies and dumb comedies in my den. When you're moving at the speed of light for 20 years and it all comes to a screeching stop, the baggage has no choice but to come forward. It's one of my favorite fucking sentences in the whole book. Any habits or addictions you have are definitely at risk of bubbling back up. And any shit you didn't want to think about is practically fucking guaranteed to come crashing through your synapses. To me, to end on that as it relates to the book is I can't think of a better way to put that's what that is. You're bearing all these things. You're moving so fast you don't even really have time to think about it because your life is on the line, or somebody else's life, or your family routine or whatever. There's so many other things that you have responsibility for and are worried about. That you really don't have time to fucking deal with it until now all of a sudden you find yourself free falling in the civilian world, and then you hit the fucking ground and everything kind of catches up. How long, and this is for both of you, I know Shane, your path is a little atypical by comparison, but for both of you, how long do you think it seemed to take from the time you got out until you felt like, okay, I'm adjusted and fucking shit's pretty normal? Or is it even?
No, I think I still do it. I think when I first got out, I tell people all the time, it's the, hero to zero syndrome, right? We are, and in the hero aspect, it doesn't have anything to do with the medals on your chest or the operations you got to participate in. It's just you are in a world where you're doing things that are bigger than you. And you get to do them on a daily basis, and then all of a sudden that stops, and you really do go from that hero status to zero. You're a nobody. For me, I was on terminal leave. I spent the last 6 months of my career here in Texas, bought a house, got getting shit squared away, and then I flew back to Virginia Beach, and within a period of an hour, I walked into PSD. I gave them my active duty card. They handed me this blue card. That's
inert.
Just the two cards in themselves is depressing, right?
Yeah.
You're giving away this beautiful, white DOD ID, the CAC card. It has a computer chip on it. It has a colored picture of you. Your name, your rank, everything is bold, black. It has a colored logo of the United States Navy on it. It can get you in and out of computer systems, bases. It can do all these things for you. You hand that over, and then in a split second, they give you this flimsy, laminated, digitized. It doesn't even look like you, the picture they took, retirement card. And then they say, I was like, is that it? They're like, yeah, that's it. See you later. And I was like,
thanks for coming.
That's
in.
it. That's the end of my career. Yeah, that's the end. See ya. Get the fuck out of here. There's another person in line.
Been great knowing you.
And so that is that for me. And then I got back on a plane and flew back to Texas. And I remember that flight, and I was just like, man, this fucking blows. And everything that you're about to, endure was the unknown, right? It's that, okay, now how do I get out of zero world again and get back up on top?
Yeah. Let me write a fucking book.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us, you're still striving for it every day that you get out. And I don't know that that's anything that actually ever goes away. We're all striving to kind of have that feeling of hero again, and try to be something again, and try to get to the point where you're doing things that, make you feel like you're part of something bigger than you. Yeah. And
not me.
Not me.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not, But I think that's my answer. And I feel like that, the short answer is you're still I think for a lot of us, you're transitioning. And for me, you're transitioning every day. Yeah. You're just it's just ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah. What, how did you feel about it?
You touched on it, atypical.
Yeah.
I didn't leave with the responsibility of most adults. Having never bought property, having never got married, having never had kids.
Allegedly.
I had a lot of freedom, but it took me a year to realize that I had that freedom.
Yeah.
And I had some second thoughts, if you will. The way I left was, it's a strangely recurring theme among guys that can think for themselves.
Less than ideal.
But that, somebody fucking with you just because they can.
Yeah.
And the hypocrisy of it. 2 years, I'd been out 2 years, and a good friend of mine had taken over as a CO of Buds. And I reached out to him to see if maybe it would be possible to come back on active duty and finish that 3 years and 7 months that I needed to retire. And that conversation, he's an O, and I got to talk to the enlisted staff. And so he turned me over to his CMC, who I had never met. And we had a couple of email conversations and a couple of phone calls, and it was decided I should come in and we should talk in person. And during that drive, I was in Montana at the time, like a 4-day drive down to San Diego because there was no hurry. He had a date that he wanted to meet me. He started digging into, because he didn't know me and I didn't know him, he started digging into, and that email that we just talked about came up. And instead of being an adult and going, all right, well, let's hear his side of it, like you would expect from another grown man, I got completely the cold shoulder from that guy. And it wasn't because of anything real. It was his imagined slight that I had performed against the system that he was horribly embedded in. So when I got to San Diego to have this meeting, complete cold, nothing. And so I called the guy that was the CO at the time, and I was like, hey, do you know what's going on here? He goes, yeah. Come on down. Let's have lunch. I'll fill you in. And it was that. He was just bitter that I had said shit that a lot of guys think, but I'd said it out loud and I didn't apologize for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, he was unwilling to even consider it. And all it did was reinforce my decision to get out, which was really nice for me. And that was a big catalyst for me to go, all right, fine, fucking, I really am done with this.
Yeah.
But the first year out, I just I wandered.
Yeah.
I really didn't have, and I still don't know that I have a ton of direction. I've got a little more direction now than I have.
Yeah.
But I viewed it as a legitimate, you made a good decision. Yeah. Now figure out what the fuck to do with it.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I didn't have the responsibility a lot of guys have, so monetarily it wasn't a big deal. So this has evolved for me nicely, and the timing is good.
Yeah.
I won't be able to do it forever. At some point I need to figure something out, or I need to die. One of those two things needs to happen. So we'll go with that previous.
rock and roll.
Not ready to die yet. But.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, again, to think about, the three of us when we first started hanging out in a platoon back then. Fast forward to where we're all at now. I'm proud as fuck of both of you guys. And,
Back at you, man.
And I think it's just neat that we've all evolved into what we have, and just even being able to sit down in a medium on a platform like this and talk about all the things that we've been through and that's going on now, and dicks. And,
your ability to do this is strangely amazing.
Erotic? I thought you were going to say
it's also erotic,
yeah.
But like
voice.
I said earlier, the podcast thing, I tried it a few times, and I tried it from guys that were supposedly tried and true, and I think they'd gotten lazy at their craft.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this early on, that you plan to never go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I'm a few behind right now, but I've listened to all of them, and your ability to interview is next level.
I appreciate
it. Really is good shit.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. It's weird because it's not something I really planned on doing, and I just kind of fucking fell into it, honestly. But I really enjoy it, and I feel.
Except when Shane's on.
Yeah, except
now it's better.
Yeah,
right now,
better.
I just made it.
It's
it
a little better.
Way
yeah. Usually when I've got to reel in long-winded motherfuckers, that's the challenging part. No, I appreciate it. It's something I really enjoy doing. Most importantly, I appreciate you guys taking the time. Clint, I know you're 5 feet away. You're fucking out of state, making the time to come here and talk and showcase your talents is awesome, and I appreciate both of you coming on and sharing your story. You guys are, two of my best friends, always will be, and I love the shit out of both of you, so I appreciate it.
We love you too, Mikey.
Love you, baby.
Thanks, buddy.
I love the tone of your voice.
Yeah. Just real quick, for both of you, you already talked about where we can find you. Clint, jump into and just give me the down and dirty on what's next and anything that you want to throw out there for the listener.
Yeah, for any of the books, you can, they're Amazon or anywhere books are sold. The Right Kind of Crazy, 100 Deadly Skills, you can Google it. It's easily found. If you get lost in all that, ClintEmerson.com is my entire ecosystem, to include the corporate side, which is Escape the Wolf. Then you've got publications, which we've already talked about. And then you've got apparel and EDC, which is Violent Nomad. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
The only thing I failed to mention earlier is I now have a YouTube channel.
Oh, good.
You mentioned, yeah, no shit.
Where you showcase your morning routine.
Well, I'm going to. I'm gonna venture down that road. Yeah,
is it electric? Is it an electric YouTube machine?
Yeah.
Now, where is that?
It's also SH9
tube,
and
just SH9.
Yeah, the long term goal is going to be putting on what I do,
like a fucking TV
educationally,
right?
So that you can see. I tried early on with the Tide handle. The industry has made a corded handle knife seem like a cheap piece of shit.
Yeah.
I can assure you that the metallurgy and what I'm doing is sound. It's just a cord handle. It's cheaper. It's easier to maintain. Things along that line, how I tie my handles, what I do, why I do what I do within this particular industry.
Oh, I dig
and as I evolve, that's going to evolve as well. So
that's a fascinating process for sure. And again, I can't speak highly enough on this work of art, fucking sentimental piece that you made with Glenn in it. And I mean, this is something that I can assure you, every fucking steak I eat and every meal that I prep in my fucking kitchen, this knife will be used to do it, and proudly so. So thank you for making this. It's
my pleasure.
So I appreciate it. Quick shout out to our sponsors, 2 of them this time: Origin Labs, Origin USA, maker of all of Jocko's products, as well as their own line of supplements. Bub's Naturals again, Glenn as in Bub, shows it right here on the knife. The old Bub, that's where the name of the company comes from. So great people behind it, great product, and it's something that are in the cups of what we're drinking right now. But go check them out, and again, 10% of all their sales goes to the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation, which is helping out a lot of veterans. So check them out and hook them up. Last but certainly not least, thank you to you guys, the listener. If not for you, I would not be able to continue to bring you phenomenal guests like these 2 gentlemen, using that term super fucking loose. But that's the reality of it is, if there wasn't such an interest in the people that I bring on, I sure as fuck wouldn't be doing it. So Thank you guys for tuning in week after week, month after month, putting up with our bullshit and supporting us. So thank you to listener. And as always, until next time, this is Mic Drop.